Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, and plenty to discuss on this Monday. Coming off the NFL Draft, NBA playoffs, and much more. Dan Dockich will join us in 20 minutes. You can find his show and all shows at our YouTube page. Just subscribe there. Just search out Outkick. Dan with us in 20 minutes. Later, Anthony Gargano will join us this hour from Philadelphia. Host of the Anthony Gargano Show, and, well, the Eagles do it again. We're not surprised, are we?
No,
I don't,
not at all.
I don't think so. The Eagles have a great draft yet again on paper, and normally that translates into production on the field. We'll get his take on the Philadelphia angle of the NFL draft. Armando Salguero a bit later, plus Ari Meroff from the 33rdteam.com. Jam-packed show today. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Big weekend. Plenty to recap. Good guest list today.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
excited about the week ahead. It's
Yeah.
nice when you come into a show and there's so much to digest.
Well, you've been one who wanted to get the draft done, right? So
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, I didn't want to get it done. I like the build-up to it, but I always talk about this whole thing about no matter – this is one year that's different. I'll explain why, but every year we spend nothing but months speculating and talking about trends and falling up or falling down or whatever it may be in the draft. The moment the picks happen, we don't remember those things anymore. We don't care. It's just about breaking down the pairings of player with team. I do think it's a little bit different in the case of Will Levis that we'll get into.
No doubt.
We're not going to forget about some things with that. But for the most part, once the draft happens, we got the draft to talk about and where these guys are going. And then it's a new day.
Yeah, and one of these franchises, traditionally, historically, what we've learned is, look, it's happened quite a bit where quarterbacks have been taken with the first two picks of the draft. What we saw last week was with three quarterbacks in the top four picks, it's only the fourth time we've seen that happen. And with Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Anthony Richardson, one of these quarterbacks historically is going to turn their franchise around for who they were selected to. And the other two are going to bomb. Two of the three are not going to work out for the organization. Case in point, in what we've seen so far from the 2021 draft, Trevor Lawrence working out okay. Beyond that, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. We know where Wilson is. He's a backup now in New York to Aaron Rodgers, and he was a backup to Mike White last year. And you could bring any quarterback in there. He would have been the backup to them last year. Meanwhile, we don't know. The jury is out on Trey Lance because of the injury and because of where they're moving towards, which is Brock Purdy, the 7th-round pick from a year ago. 1999 is the next time you can find this happen with Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, and Akili Smith. And then back in 71 with Plunkett, Archie Manning, and Dan Pastorini. Point being, one of these three is going to be set up perfectly on how these other picks around them work out and they hit early on the young guys and the rookie contracts. Meanwhile, we will look back and think, man, what a joke of a pick so-and-so was. Houston, who I think made a great selection with C.J. Stroud, following it up by trading up for Will Anderson. Time will tell. But time will also tell on two other quarterbacks that were in this group of three that were thought could go in round one with Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, who both go to organizations where it is now set up for them to sit and learn and improve for a year. Maybe not a full season, but a redshirt year is the expectation for a second-round pick or a third-round pick based on the veterans who are there as we sit here today. The other three don't have that luxury, and they shouldn't, based on where they're selected. Even Indianapolis, who's already saying, hey, it's going to be ugly early for Anthony Richardson. We're buying into his ceiling. Chad, the storyline for the 2023 draft for me will be those three and the other two. I realize we had a record number of quarterbacks selected over the course of the 7 rounds. But specifically, Will Levis and Hendon Hooker will tie into the top three and the quarterback situations that they went to. And when the patience, in some ways, the patience that they will be given as they arrive to their practice facilities. How will that tie in to the guys who have to jump into the fire immediately And again, history shows of the three, one's going to actually turn out to be the right selection.
Yeah, and I think the one is Bryce Young. I mean, if I'm projecting right now, I think that's the one. And that's not to say C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson can't be good players, but you're right, Hutton. I mean, it's a guessing game. That's what the draft is. It's your prediction, your educated guess about what's going to happen. I really don't like the spot Anthony Richardson's in to more than likely be thrown directly into it with the Colts.
It's the way it feels.
Because he needs seasoning. C.J. Stroud is a little bit more ready, but is that the spot you want to be in year one with a new coach and all the problems there with the Texans?
The good news on that, they have future first-round picks from other trades.
Yeah.
And they can build around him now.
Well, this is the beauty of falling to the second or third round, the way Will Levis and Hendon Hooker is. And I make those points to say this point. Those guys are set up in a way that there's very little pressure on them, and they may end up being the biggest success stories of this draft, given the situations they've been thrown into. Now, one is with an organization that is pretty middling, but has done a lot of winning lately with the Tennessee Titans, Will Levis. The other one's with an organization who never wins, but looks like they're set up to win for a long time in the Detroit Lions. They've actually made good decisions the last few years. They've got a good coach, I think, in Dan Campbell. They have direction.
Identity.
So Hendon Hooker's in a spot where I think it's less likely he starts at any point this season with Jared Goff playing in front of him.
Yep.
I think it's more likely Levis takes that job or is given the job because of injury with Ryan Tannehill at some point this year with the Titans. But that is going to be interesting to watch those two and their careers from here on out because it's very similar spots in two different conferences for both of them. And while I completely disagree with the Titans taking Will Levis, he is in a good spot for Will Levis.
Yeah, it's great for him.
That's I mean,
it worked out very well for him.
He hates he had to sit there in Kansas City through a first round and not be selected, but it really couldn't have worked out much better in terms of location, franchise, and situation around him to where eventually maybe he can succeed.
And, I mean, that's what Anthony Richardson needed. But other teams don't have that luxury. Jim Irsay said, hey, if we're picking number one this year, we're likely still selecting Anthony Richardson. Now, you can believe that all you want, but listening to the pressers over the weekend, the Colts come across as an organization that fell in love with this guy about 10 days into Shane Steichen being on the job. And they never really wavered from that. So the accuracy issues and other things that play a factor, they think they can coach him up to reach full potential instead of him where he is, which is at the lowest floor of the quarterbacks available. Meanwhile, the pressure's on Bryce Young just to be the number one overall pick. And Houston has traded future picks in order to move up to get Will Anderson, but that's after they drafted their quarterback, their franchise quarterback, C.J. Stroud. And Levis, by the way, is eventually going to be the franchise quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. Otherwise, I don't know why they trade up in the second round to draft him with the second pick on day number 2. Chad, the quarterback drama and the really uncertainty of how this would all fall played great into the ratings.
Yeah.
They're up. They averaged 11 million. And it was coming off a year where one quarterback selected in the first round, it was the lowest rating for the NFL draft in 5 years. It's the third highest draft total of people watching. Second was 2021 with the quarterbacks that we mentioned that went 1, 2, and then 3. And then the 2020 draft where everyone is stuck inside their homes and watching everything take place on Zoom. So the quarterback drama did play a factor for people tuning in. And the drama with Will Levis played a factor.
Quarterback drama played a factor for sure. And on site, the attendance for the actual draft in Kansas City delivered. Second biggest all time. 312,000 in Kansas City over the weekend. Still just pales in comparison to that 600,000 in Nashville back in 2019. No one has even come close to reaching the standard set by Nashville in the draft. But a good weekend in Kansas City. I thought it looked great on Thursday night with just the amount of people that were there. So once again, this is an event that is a huge W for the NFL, for college football.
It's PR.
For the game of football in general, for the city of Kansas City. Everyone, television networks.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the different television products we had to consume, with ABC's coverage from the college angle with Herb Street and the Game Day guys, to ESPN and Mel Kiper, to NFL Network. I mean, it is just a smorgasbord of football information over the course of those 3 days, and it delivered once again. Hutton, also, you delivered, by the way. You called Michael Mayer and Hendon Hooker's teams.
Yeah, well,
the people that look, the YouTube chat, we cannot argue with the YouTube chat. They now want to call you Hutradamus based on those prognostications on Friday where you nailed it. Your final sign-off of the week was Mayer to the Raiders,
yes,
Hendon Hooker to the Lions, and that happened in rounds 2 and 3. Well done.
Yeah, well, Detroit had 3 picks, right? They moved around a bit. They had 3 picks. And Mayer to Vegas just made sense based on Darren Waller not being there. Best tight end on the board at that spot. I thought Vegas did well based on who was available and the needs that they had. And Hendon Hooker, that's a great spot for him.
Yeah.
And we hit on this, Chad, and we'll touch on it later in the week too. He's going to be a perfect backup quarterback in waiting there. There's not going to be any drama behind the scenes with Hendon Hooker if Jared Goff starts throwing some picks in weeks 1 and 2.
He's already shown that in college that he can be a good backup and a good teammate.
Yeah, it's worth the investment because of the multiple picks that Detroit had compared to the Titans, who had 6 total picks the entire weekend, and they traded up to get Will Levis. Also delivering, Steph Curry again. And, I mean, he drops 50 in a Game 7 after calling a team meeting and discussing things point blank with whether or not they wanted to be there. And if you didn't want to buy in, then, you can see the door, don't show up for the game kind of thing. But, Chad, I can't help but watch this and be in amazement, even though he does this regularly with the type of performances that we saw.
It's incredible. And him having the meeting and saying, basically, if you're going to be in your emotions, don't make the trip to Sacramento for this Game 7.
Yeah.
And don't even bother. 50 points. All-time Game 7 record. Second all-time is Kevin Durant with 48 and a loss for Brooklyn. Incredible. The moment that we watch the NBA and start saying, I fully believe this. The Kings were the story of this first round. They were the Cinderella that people were starting to gravitate towards. They were beaming up towards Sacramento with a victory beam. They wanted them to win. And Steph Curry proves once again why he's the best story in the NBA and my favorite player in the NBA. The moment it almost becomes old hat. So it start rooting against the Warriors because of all the success. And Steph Curry becomes a villain to some. He rises up, and in a moment where it feels like the Kings are going to take that next step, and he single-handedly takes his team, his championship team, defending their title, takes them to victory with 50 points in a Game 7 in a very hostile environment on the road in Sacramento, proving once again that he is the guy in the NBA. It's him and LeBron, but that 50-point performance, LeBron's not going to score 50 in these playoffs. He's a great player. He did a lot of trash talking over the weekend also, and rightfully so. But Steph Curry's the guy. Incredible performance. Hats off to him. And the Warriors move on, and for the NBA's purposes, we just talked about ratings in the NFL draft. Best case scenario, that the Lakers and the Warriors survived, and they move on now into the next round, because I think that's going to be what drives ratings in the Western Conference playoffs, will be those two teams.
Yeah, because no one else will reach forward and grab the brass ring of the younger guys in their 20s, superstars.
Yep.
It's the older. Steph's about to be, is he 34 or 35 years old? He's there. We know LeBron and 37, but when you start, Steph's 35. Thank you, Davey. When you start to look at where LeBron is in his career, I mean, he's played how many full seasons if you just count the playoffs alone? So, I mean, it's not the same there either. But their
he came in the league in 2002, I think. No, 2003. 2003 was LeBron's first year.
And you start to look around, and you're like, okay, who else is going to step up? Giannis is talking about, in the other conference, talking about how it's not a failure to lose to an 8 seed, and that it's a staircase climb to win another championship, and that's all fair. But you won't hear that coming from Steph Curry or LeBron James.
No, Steph Curry, meanwhile, is calling a players-only meeting saying stay home if you're going to be emotional about this Game 7.
Not only that, they're both away. He's up at 3:45 in the morning when he's texting with
Draymond Green.
Yeah, with Draymond. And Draymond was up. He's like, hey, I want to talk to the team. And he's like, no, I got this. And the rest was exactly what he said. Players called it the greatest speech of his career.
Greatest speech of his career.
And he goes out and delivers.
Followed by a 50-point Game 7 record amount of points. Incredible.
Unstoppable at that point.
Dylan Brooks bit off more than he could chew. That was my fear for the Grizzlies all along.
And then doesn't face the media.
And then gets fined because he won't see the media. Weak.
Yeah, we'll get into that because his contract's up. He says he wants to be back in Memphis, but he's not going to change how he talks trash, and he wants to be used in a better way. Oh, okay. I mean, you stirred the pot and your team took up for you in that regard, and then you didn't show up. He didn't show up. Dan Dockett shows up. Host of Don't At Me. Dan with us next. We will recap the NFL draft and the NBA playoffs. It's all straight ahead on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up. Quit littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that.
I believe in it.
Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
And people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Anthony Gargano will join us in about 20 minutes or so. Glad you're with us for Hot Mic across the Outkick Network. Hutton and Withrow with you. Joined by Dan Dockich, host of Don't At Me with Dan Dockich across the Outkick Network, mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern. Dan, good to see you. What is life like in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson and knowing that the entire organization is admitting it's going to be ugly early, but the highest ceiling was with the Florida quarterback?
Yeah, I remember when Paul was on the show, your show, and he'd always get mad because I talked about what simps the local media are and what water carriers they are for Chris Ballard. Look, this is Chris Ballard being a survivor. Nobody's a better survivor than Chris Ballard. They took Richardson. Mike Martz told me today on Don't At Me, that it's going to be at least 3 years. It was refreshing to hear a guy say, look, this guy does not pass the ball worth a damn. He just doesn't. You know, in our neck of the woods, all the media thinks it's the greatest choice ever. We just had the greatest draft, and next thing you know, the Colts are going to be in the Super Bowl. And our latest coach of 5 in this administration, in this GM's 6-year tenure, Stryken, or whatever the hell his name is the new quarterback whisperer, and he's going to make Richardson great. Look, I don't know. I do know this. You are going to see and hear from Indianapolis and national media. You will see all the great plays he makes running the 1 or 2 good passes. But people in the know in the NFL say this dude has a long way to go. Again, Mike Martz said 3 years. Who knows?
How about the division, Dan? With all the young quarterbacks now, and eventually we're going to see Will Levis here take over for Ryan Tannehill. Houston, I think, made the right call by drafting C.J. Stroud. And by the way, they're chasing Jacksonville now and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, isn't there a lot of ifs with it? Like if Will Levis can really play, I think Will Levis caught the break of a lifetime going to Tennessee. You know, Tennessee may have caught a break too. We'll see. But Levis gets a chance to go to an organization that, in my view, you guys may think differently, but in my view, Mike Vrabel and the folks in Tennessee are serious people. And if one of the reasons that Levis fell was because he's I, me, I, all that kind of immature stuff, then that's going to get straightened out real quick. And then your talent takes over and your intelligence. And by all accounts, he has that. I agree with you on Tennessee or Texas. I think Texas absolutely had to do that. And good for them. You know what? They traded up, got Will Anderson Jr. and the 3rd pick. Hey, look, when you aren't very good, you need stars. You need top of the roster players. I don't know about you guys, but that's what I constantly complain about here. In Indy, we always say it's not about one guy. It's about all 53. That's what Ballard says. I think that's a bunch of crap. It's about the high-end talent that you have. So it'll be interesting to see how early Levis gets. Stroud, I would assume, is going to come right in. And look, here in Indy, you got the 4th pick. You drafted a quarterback. I would think the expectation is to learn a bit on the fly. So maybe the league got really good. Let's see in 2 years, or maybe the league picked a bunch of guys that couldn't play. I don't know yet.
Dan, Steph Curry's pretty good. How about that performance?
Woo!
50 points, a record in a Game 7. And I feel like, at least for me, I don't forget about Steph Curry, but the moment you stop thinking about him, he stands up and reminds you just how great he is.
I think he's the best player in the world right now. Maybe you can say this guy or that guy, but this guy also had 8 rebounds and 6 assists. I mean, look, when anybody else does that, we celebrate everything, the all-around game. With Curry, sometimes we just say, he's 20 or 38, but I'm with you. I'm watching that game, and Klay Thompson can't hit a thing. Draymond Green's useless offensively. Jordan Poole's supposed to be the second guy and wasn't. And Curry just went Michael Jordan. I mean, truthfully, he just went Michael Jordan and said, to hell with this. I'm going to do what I got to do. He did take a bunch of threes, but, man, he was going to the rim. He was doing those one-handed floaters. Look, to me, you got to be an adult in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL or football to win. Children don't win. Children don't beat Curry 4 out of 7. Children don't beat LeBron James 4 out of 7. And we saw between John Morant and Dylan, Brooks, they were children, absolute children. And LeBron just took care of his business. Curry took care of his. Now, I think there's different levels of children. I think that the Aaron Fox and the folks at Sacramento are legitimate. I think that the folks in Memphis got a lot of growing up to do. But the fact of the matter is the adults in the room won, and now the adults are going to play each other with LeBron going at Curry. And I got to tell you, whether you like the NBA or not, that's must-see TV, man, at least in my world.
And you talked about the children with the Memphis Grizzlies and Dylan Brooks and his antics. I love the fact that LeBron waited till that thing was over and just unleashed a tirade on everyone at the free throw line where you could catch everything, every F-bomb he was dropping, everything he was saying about you guys hit a couple shots and want to talk trash. Where are you talking now? He waits until the series is over until he talks his trash.
It declares it over, by the way.
Yeah,
You're no longer allowed to talk trash to me.
Right, yeah. Don't ever speak to me again. I thought it was a masterpiece from LeBron James of how to talk trash and when to talk trash. And a good reminder that LeBron James has been around the block a while and won some championships. And he's the adult you're talking about, Dan, that can win a title.
Hey, LeBron James has had people coming at him since he was a sophomore in high school. There were high school teams, man. I mean, I remember watching. I remember a little team, a friend of mine was a coach, Al Wells. They had a 3 in the air to beat LeBron. And I mean, the entire Schottenstein Center, it was packed because of LeBron. And you know how it goes. Groups always want the underdog to win.
Oh, yeah.
He's had people coming at him so long, NBA guys. He's had dudes that are serious dudes coming at him. And I'm with you on that, Chad. I love the fact he never said Dylan Brooks' name. He came out, I guess it was a repeat of some rap lyrics where if you see me fighting a grizzly, go help the bear after the fact. Look, whether you like LeBron James or not, that's up for debate. I loved what he did. He never mentioned the dude's name. He never gave him the respect of saying Dylan Brooks. Never said it, kicked the crap out of him, and then Dylan Brooks did what all punks do. He backed away from going in front of the media. He didn't show after the 3 losses. He can say whatever he wants, you know, all that nonsense, I'm a competitor, blah, 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 blah. You're a phony, you're a fraud, and as the great Brian Windhorst said, he was trying to be diet Draymond Green. Screw him. LeBron moves on, and we got adults in the room.
Dan Doncic with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow on the Outkick Network. Dan, so Giannis, I thought, was very contrite and honest in his response to losing to an 8 seed to the media member who asked about, you know, is this a failure? How do you consider it? Oh, he lost audio. Or maybe he did. We didn't lose your audio there.
We got you.
Giannis's
I got you, man.
Giannis's take on losing to the 8 seed, but the overall mentality not being a failure. As a former coach and player, you're thinking what?
Well, I agree with what he said. I think sometimes we don't want to hear it because fans always want to say, oh, man, it's about the chip and all that. Hey, look. A lot of really high-paid guys are trying, a lot of really hard-working, high-paid guys are all trying for the same thing. I agreed with what Giannis said. Now, what Giannis ultimately going to have to do, obviously, is get a championship. And then he will be able to talk about, well, it took me this long. You know, one of the things, the Woods is full of coaches that went years without being really successful. And then because of patience, they did, including John Wood. Mike Krzyzewski famously, you know, was thinking about or may have gotten fired after year 3 when they got blown out in the ACC tournament. You know, but the truth of the matter is the society we live in, and I don't think it's right, championship or nothing, I think it's kind of crap. Giannis already has one. He'll probably get another 1 or 2. But the truth of the matter is, how do I put this right? You can say anything after a loss, and that's great, and it makes sense. But, man, there ain't nothing like winning. Man, hey, you played really hard. God, what a great game you guys played. Oh, yeah. And when you lose, people forget about you. And when you win, it's a whole nother level. So good for Giannis for standing up. It was a good back and forth. Guy asked a good question. Giannis gave a great answer. But the fact of the matter is, man, oh, man, it is a whole lot different when you get that W as opposed to when you get the L, no matter how eloquently you describe the fact that maybe it was or wasn't a failure.
Well, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I respect him for staying in the Milwaukee market. Let me say that, preface all this. But the pressure is off of him now after winning the 1. He stayed. Guys can join him there, but it's not like, I mean, the NBA is very odd, where there are high expectations on one, maybe two guys to deliver annually. And then everyone else is just there for the party. And I feel like Giannis is a part of the party, and he's not on that pedestal, and he could be.
Well, he's got a championship, and, I think he's the hardest guy to guard from 18 feet in, maybe that I've ever seen, not named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because he follows his shot. But let's be honest, man. The fact of the matter is, if you're Giannis, you're not, and you're on the list of all-time greats, which is where a guy like him should be. You're not losing in the first round to an 8 seed.
Right.
You look historically. It just doesn't happen. Maybe, I don't know, maybe last year or whenever, LeBron had 1 year out of 20 where he didn't make the playoffs or whatever. I don't know. But when you look at the all-time greats, how many different teams has LeBron James taken to the finals? I mean, he was taking Matthew Dellavedova, Tristan Thompson, and those kind of guys to the damn final. He wasn't losing in the first round. So to your point, I do agree with what you are saying. Now, as I said, though, it's going to be incumbent on Giannis to get back there. And you know what? Nobody's going to want to hear a word that he says if they do the same thing next year, because that championship now is way, way, way back when. In fact, if you look at it this year, how often was LeBron James criticized for what he's done in L.A. with people saying, well, the only title they won was when it was in the bubble and it was a weird year, and who the hell knew, does that really count? Well, you know what? We have very short memories. But you don't lose in the first round to an 8 seed when you are the 1 seed if you are on that pantheon. Magic and Bird and Jordan and Isaiah and all those guys. You don't do it.
So, Dan, I spent a lot of my weekend coaching my daughter's 8U softball team, and I'm happy to report that only girls play in this league. And then I see over the weekend that Brittany Griner, one of the greatest female athletes alive and one of the greatest basketball players in women's basketball of the last 25 years, is on a podium saying that it should be illegal to not allow, men to play with women. And I just think, what the hell are we doing? What is going on here? What do you make of the latest from Brittany Griner on this, where I felt like we were starting to gain some momentum with a lot of things being said towards more common sense when it came to separating the sexes with sports?
Well, I think Brittany Griner's an idiot. I mean, you go to Russia. We can say whether she should have been lawfully, unlawfully, but you go to Russia, you have a house there. You've been there for years, and you're dumb enough or arrogant enough to bring weed where you know the consequences. I mean, that's the truth of what happened with Brittany Griner. I think she's a stone idiot. I also think there's been a shift. For about the last year, anytime anybody criticized the transgender movement, it was always seen as that criticism is dangerous to the transgender movement. It was always seen as dangerous. It was always seen as inciting violence. Well, what have we seen lately? We've seen the transgender community cause violence, commit violence. And now I believe this. I believe that somehow the word got out, hey, look, we've got to start saying the terms illegal, because Dylan Mulvaney did the same thing. Dylan Mulvaney came out and said, look, if you misgender me, that should be a crime. It should be illegal. It's not a coincidence that Dylan Mulvaney and now Brittany Griner went from, well, it's really dangerous, to this is a crime. Of course it's not a crime. Of course it shouldn't be a crime. Common sense said girls play with girls, boys play with boys, and if the transgender community wants to get their own league, go get your own league. I mean, that to me is common sense. But I swear to God, it's almost like a memo went out where everybody said, okay, hold on. We're not going with dangerous anymore. We're going with criminal. Man, I got to tell you, if any of your lawmakers, my lawmakers, any lawmakers that I have a vote for comes out and says that it's a crime to misgender somebody, call a person with a penis a man, and that's misgendering, whatever whatever legislator comes out with that, they got to be voted out of office immediately, because that's just idiotic. I just think Brittany Griner's a stone idiot.
And the media sitting there is propping this up, though. They're pitching the softballs that Chad was pitching over the weekend.
Even the question bothered me. In that press conference, I'm thinking, what are you doing? This is not, as Hutton says, this is not the softball to throw. Like, this is just, it bothers me, Dan. It bothers me. I know it does you too.
Well, it should. It does, and because I have a daughter, you have a daughter, they play sports, and I'm sitting there going, wait a second here. And you know, you guys have talked about my wife ad nauseum for years, but she's one of the real fighters. She had to move out of a city, Toledo, that didn't have women's softball and move to Michigan so she could play. And now you're saying, okay, well, not only are we going to do this, but we're going to have guys play? No, it's ridiculous. Look, if you're born a guy and you're transgender into a woman, play with the guys. Pretty simple. I don't think that's that difficult, in my opinion. But apparently it is. And the media is so afraid. Everybody, you know this, everybody's so afraid to be called racist or some kind of ick. You know, nobody wants to be called some kind of ick, or ism. Racist, transphobic, misogynist. You know what? At the end of the day, I'd just as soon be called a guy with some common sense, and common sense dictates to me certainly isn't illegal. Girls, go play with girls. Boys, go play with boys. Transgender, go get your own league and have at it and have a great time.
Dan, final thing. How refreshed did Aaron Rodgers look last week at the presser and then actually showing up to off-season work? I mean, ayahuasca's working wonders on that, plus a darkness retreat. He's going to have a line following him there.
He looked refreshed at the Knicks game also.
Unbelievable.
Madison Square Garden, he looked great.
I mean, maybe it's just a haircut, but I mean, the guy looks like 10 years younger now.
Yeah, I remember when I got divorced, baby. My dad told me, get a nice sweater and lose some weight, and you'll be just fine. And you know, next thing you know, the white man overbite came out, and I was something. Yeah, I mean, look, people always say, right? People always talk about. I was thinking about, it's great. I'm glad you asked that question, because people always talk about, well, you know, the team's got to be exhausted with Rodgers, the other players. But I started thinking about it, man, I bet you Aaron Rodgers is tired of this too. I bet you Aaron Rodgers is playing his brains out. They never draft a wide receiver for him. He's trying to make all these guys good, and he has. He's been terrific. But I wonder at some point, like, you know, you see all of a sudden the last few years, you guys mentioned a dark room, mushrooms, whatever the psychedelics are, hanging with Sherpas and all. I wonder how much of that was a distraction for him. You know what I mean? Just to get his mind away from all the crap. Because Aaron Rodgers knows that every day when he turns on ESPN, they're going to be talking about him, just like Mike McCarthy knows every day he turns on something, they're going to be talking about him. Play the hits. LeBron knows. Play the hits. That's the mantra. So I wonder if all this was a distraction. Now that it's finally gone, I agree. He looked refreshed. He looked ready to go. And that's dangerous for a lot of teams in the East.
Yeah, Chad, we were discussing, Dan, the discussion of, well, it's a lot to go in with if you only think he's going to play 1 year. And I think it's pretty clear based on how he's reacted to it all. He's there.
This guy's aiming for Tom Brady's life now and his playing career at this point. He might play 5 more years.
For the Big Apple.
You know what's interesting? What a difference, right? Tom Brady, juicing, doesn't eat meat, all that stuff that Brady does. And I don't know what Rodgers eats. I assume he eats very healthy. But you think about it, he's taking psychedelics. He's got all this crap.
He's got to have the munchies, yeah.
He's drinking, he's got scotch going or whatever. He talks about it like, and here's Brady. He's never eaten anything that didn't come out of the ground or something. A lot of ways to get it done, fellas. A lot of ways to get it done.
Well, Aaron Rodgers just pukes it all up. I mean, he had a purging ceremony in Costa Rica at this ayahuasca camp. Yeah, it's a ceremony. They all get together and they drink something that makes them vomit everything up. And they sit there and throw up together. So that's maybe part of the reason he looks so refreshed.
Broadway on a Thursday night is what it looked like.
Well, I got to tell you, I did that in college with one of my friends, Danny Hanlon, behind the Mary Bowl, and it wasn't based on any kind of special thing. It was based on too much Boone's Farm back when we were about 21 years old. And we ended up having a contest who could do it more. I'm happy to say I won because I went the extra mile with a finger down my throat. But so I get what Aaron Rodgers is doing. I got to tell you, though, I still remember the feeling after that. You feel like your teeth are on fire. And good for Rodgers. He's a tough dude if he can do that more than a half a time in your lifetime.
Dan Dockett's the champion of the Tour de Franzia.
Yes.
Joins us each and every Monday.
Vomitorium or whatever they call this ritual.
Yeah.
Dan, always great to have you on, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything. Enjoy the day.
Yeah, same to you. Dan Dockett. Don't at me. Check him out tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on the Outkick Network. Coming up, Anthony Gargano will join us from Philly. A lot to discuss with how the Eagles just continue to get it right. That's next on Hot Mic.
Last thing, did you know that a fan, there's always the same guys. A fan is suing Bradley Beal of the Wizards. A fan is asking for damages in excess of $50,000. According to the report, this guy, his name, it's unbelievable. His name is Kyler Briffa. He's from Orange County, Florida. Now listen to this. Beal was headed to the locker room when a friend of Briffa's said, "You made me lose $1,300, you F." Briffa apparently was the guy that Beal thought said it. Beal said, "When you disrespect me, I'm going to press you about it. Do you think this is a joke? 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 Because when I press you about it, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?" Apparently Bradley Beal repeats himself. All right? Somehow this is a complaint by this guy. Now, I don't know what the problem is. He addressed the incident. No one wants to lose money. I get it. If you keep it about sports, I'm all for it. But I think it's when people start getting personal, talking about your family, talking about your character, your integrity towards the game, I think all that, we can save it. We can really keep those comments to ourselves. Yeah, well, that ain't happening. So look, I got to tell you, then what happened is this. Listen to this. Beal turned around and hit Briffa on the side of the head, knocking his hat off. Well, you can't hit people. Just pay the $50,000 and move along. If you did it, if it's on video, pay the $50,000 and away you go. But you can't be walking off the court hitting people. And when did NBA players become so sensitive? I walked on a court at Michigan State and 12,600 people chanted literally, "We hate Dockage." Hate is what they said. Not dislike, not don't like, or you suck. They hate. Not one thing was done about it. I didn't whine about it. Stood up, waved. I mean, what are you going to do? The next game at Purdue, the paint crew chanted, "We love Dockage." When did everybody get so sad? Well, you'll make it personal. Of course it's personal. Sports is personal, you idiots. Well, you don't talk about my family. I'll give you that. You don't talk about the integrity of the game. Shut up. Shut up. If you want to talk about the integrity of the game, don't promote Draymond Green dancing around like a complete clown in the middle of a court after getting ejected. If you want to talk about the integrity of the game, how about you don't wear hats on the sideline when you're not playing? Yeah, seriously.
One of the big team storylines over the NFL draft weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome back to Hot Mic across the Outkick Network. Hutton and Withrow with you. Anthony Gargano, great radio host there for The Fanatic. Anthony Gargano Show, plus Fox Sports Radio is where you can also hear him as well. Anthony, great to have you on, man. We appreciate the time.
What's going on, fellas? Philadelphia is the center of the sports universe right now.
It's not that bad. And, there's just something about, when the Chiefs draft a player, like, oh, of course. It just fell straight to Kansas City. I feel the same way now about the Eagles with what Roseman's doing. Jalen Carter's even saying before the first round, hey, if Philadelphia's on the clock and I'm still available, they're drafting me. And they did. They make it look very easy.
It's interesting because they have cachet, right? Every team in the NFL, what you're looking for cachet. And Howie Roseman has a formula where he's achieved it. And it's really interesting, and you could see it. Micah Parsons, you guys saw the video of him talking about, he was bemoaning the fact that the Eagles got, Jalen Carter and then Nolan Smith and the rich get richer. And they had A.J. Brown on, and A.J. Brown's going, come on, Micah, I know you want to be a part of the Eagles. And I think they've got that cachet. And Howie, it's interesting. Over the last 3 years, guys, he said, look, I'm just going to go and not be too cute and not try to reinvent the wheel. And I'm going to go to programs that are winning programs. And look, this Georgia thing is pretty amazing.
And not just the Georgia thing, the Alabama thing on offense. And I look at it, I see all the jokes around it, and you just start to look on paper, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, and then go down the list of other guys in defense. And then, of course, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith. They draft Tyler Steen from Alabama this year. And I think, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you go get multiple guys from maybe the greatest defense in the history of college football to join the same team? How are the Eagles the only one thinking of this, to go get Alabama and Georgia guys almost exclusively? Of course it'll work.
Yeah, it's funny. Jordan Davis was last year's #1 pick. So now they have bookend tackles off that Georgia defense. And, it's so funny. I had talked about this a while back. If you guys remember when Chip Kelly was the coach, they did it in a different way. They went all Pac-12 players, right? So they were heavy the Pac-12. And it was like, wait a second, guys. You're going to give me Pac-12? You're not going to give me SEC? If you want to have a conference all-star team, then do it with the SEC.
No doubt, man. And speaking of Georgia Titans, DeAndre Swift ends up in Philadelphia, too, through the trade.
Dean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, so with Swift in particular, is he at the end of next season, do we look back at the draft weekend and he's #1 on the board for why they are where they are? Is he a difference maker for them offensively?
Yeah, so here's the deal with Swift, and I love it. He's a Philly kid. He went to a local powerhouse high school, St. Joe's Prep. He's from the area. He knows the whole thing. And look, you're getting him into his last year of his deal. They have a pretty good running back room. Now, they got Rashad Penny. They took a flyer on him. Now, he's got to stay healthy. They have Gainwell and Boston Scott, who are big mainstays. The issue here is that the Eagles' offensive line is so good, and Jalen Hurts +1 in the run game makes them really difficult to stop. So, you come in and here's Swift. You can use him in the passing game. You can run the ball with him. And they believe in more of a committee situation so that they don't have to exhaust one guy and then one guy gets hurt. So the fact that they have a committee, I think really helps them. And remember, you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, who's a good pass-catching tight end. So you're really strong in the pass game. And so your run game is open. If you're going to go light in the box and go 7 guys, they're going to run on you all day long.
Jalen Hurts was the highest paid player in the NFL for a very short amount of time until Lamar Jackson signed his contract. After you see the Lamar Jackson deal, do you feel better about what the Eagles did to lock up Jalen Hurts, knowing that that was the bar that Jackson and now others will probably go over, and it's not necessarily Jalen Hurts at the top of that list?
Yeah, and you knew that the minute he signed that deal, that he was going to, his reign would be very, very short. It's almost like Bud Fox as reign of the CEO in the movie Wall Street. He got the shortest reign as CEO, Fox. And you knew that was going to happen when it come to Jalen. Now, here's the thing. That contract, the way it's structured, you have 2 years, the next 2 years, where you're not going to have to pay him that much. And then when the thing goes up in the third year, the cap's going to go up. So I thought the way that thing was structured, and he's 24 years old, was brilliance by Howie Roseman in navigating the cap. I've known Howie since he came in. He graduated law school. He was an intern. He came back in the entry-level position. He has figured this thing out. He studied under Andy Reid, under Joe Banner. He's been with the organization 20 years. He's a great story in that he got bounced. He and Chip Kelly did not get along. Chip banished him to the other side of the building. He could have left. He decides to stay because he was very close to Jeffrey Lurie. He comes back. He wins the team's first Super Bowl ever, and then he gets back to another year last year, and then he's got him set to be, pretty much dynastic.
Anthony Gargano has been our guest, Philly radio host, Fox Sports Radio, as well as where you can find him for the Anthony Gargano Show. Thank you so much for the quick hit here. And, oh, by the way, I'll just throw in, as we're up against it, I mean, they're also in the NFC. Look at what Jalen Hurts and the investments that have been made.
Wide open.
With all of the quarterbacks in the AFC. Wide open track. And they're in the toughest division, I get it, but wide open. Appreciate the time,
Yeah, they're
man.
going to own it. Yeah. All right, boys. Be good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony.
Anthony Gargano. Check him out there on social, Twitter on the screen. Chad, they crushed it. The Eagles crushed it. And it's patience. They moved around a lot. They didn't give up a ton of draft capital from next year's draft to do it. And they're going to get compensatory selections next year for the talent that they just lost this past offseason based on production.
When they drafted,
they're stacked.
Keely Ringo in the 4th round, I was watching on Saturday, and I'm thinking, how? First off, how is this guy still there? I saw him in the end of the 1st round or 2nd round projections at one point, and he's there in the 4th round for the Philadelphia Eagles, who's building a Georgia defensive all-star team already, and you've got this 6'2" corner who was great at Georgia, who does have some questions about him. That's why he fell to the 4th round. But still, amazing that he was there for the Eagles to select. Perfect for them. And why wouldn't you want to go with those Georgia defensive guys and pair them up again together in Philly? Great work by Howie Roseman.
No doubt.
We'll talk more about it later, too.
Coming up, Mel Kiper has been mocked to Canton. We'll discuss that. Plus, LeBron silenced Dylan Brooks and the Memphis Grizzlies. 40 points. That was the victory margin for LA in a deciding game as they move on. Details next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is
In the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here for the Monday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the Outkick Network. Glad you're with us. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. And if you're watching online, streaming live at Outkick.com, but also on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel there and get all of the access to all of the shows. Just search out Outkick on YouTube. Chad, there is an ESPN executive who believes that Mel Kiper should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I don't disagree. There is now a contributor wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Ed Sable was selected 5-6 years ago, I believe now, for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I do think, based on where we are with NFL draft coverage and how Mel Kiper Jr. started at his home in Baltimore in a basement with like VCR tapes going through and dissecting all of this as the quote-unquote draft analyst and what it has become, we're absolutely going to see that. And, you know, it's a discussion point because the ESPN exec is saying it, previewing and then recapping what we've seen. That's via Front Office Sports. But the way it's grown and the event and it's a totally different season for the league. And he's been the face of the NFL draft for all of it, for all of their coverage.
There's no disputing his impact on the media portion of the draft and the game and the name recognition and all of that. The contributors wing, how many people in there? Ed Sable was an NFL employee. You know, he was with NFL Films, but it was a wing of the NFL. So I'm trying to see now how many of the contributors are just with networks that are a partner with the NFL.
Yeah, but I think that's where we're headed. I mean, there's no reason why, you know, Al Michaels won't be there, right? If you start to think of the media members and the voices of the league, you know, Pat Summerall comes to mind, paired with John Madden. Those who pave the way for where the league is, where they're getting $1 billion for one game a week from Amazon Prime. And the numbers dwarf anything that we're seeing in the off season too.
We had a buddy who would always ask, "What's the criteria?" Right? We got to know the criteria for this because right now all I'm seeing are NFL employees, on this list. Pete Rozelle. You got commissioners, you've got owners, you've got GMs.
Yeah.
Well,
they're going back. I mean, they have to go back a ways in guys who have not been in, and that's how they're getting the owners in, right? So like, and commissioners. So I mean, there's a long list of not coaches or players. That this is how they're going to get scouts in. For instance.
Yeah, I mean, I can read you. It's a pretty short list, actually.
But it started in 2014, I believe.
The list right now, Tex Schramm was in 1991. Pete Rozelle, 1985. There are others that are listed as contributors that were enshrined many years ago.
But now they have this. They formed their own subcommittee.
Yeah, Wellington Mara, 1997. Jim Finks, 1995. Joe Carr, 1963. Charles Bidwell, 1967. Burt Bell, 1963. Bobby Beathard, Eddie DeBartolo, George Hallis, Lamar Hunt, Jerry Jones, Curly Lambeau. A lot of owners, GMs, scouts, and Ed Sable right now.
Well,
is who's on the
but a lot of
list.
those from previous to 2014 were coaches, and coaches were on the modern era candidacy prior to when they did this. And the goal was to allow more to get in. If you're only going to have 5 modern era candidates that actually get in as players, then you're never going to vote the coach over the player.
I wanted to look that up only to see if they're starting to go down that path. If they do, yeah, he should be in as a media member, as one of the most impactful media members covering the NFL.
Yeah.
That was a trailblazer in the art of covering the NFL draft and helping to make it as big as it is today. But now that I see the list and see all the ones that have to be added before him, he will be long gone before he's enshrined at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But one day, yeah, I'm all for that happening the moment they start bringing in broadcasters. And I love Mel Kiper. There are so many broadcasters I'm going down the list and putting in before Mel Kiper that have covered the league.
But it is tough to say if you start listing off faces on TV that when you see them, you think of one thing. There are plenty of broadcasters who will call all sports, right?
Yeah. He's the NFL draft guy. There's no doubt.
He's the draft. And it is 11 million viewers for their coverage, up, 13% or whatever it is, whatever they are pushing. They have 30-something million total over the course of the weekend. That's remarkable. And the way it is spread out to where it's not just ESPN any longer, it's ABC, NFL Network, all the streaming services. I was watching a lot of their coverage with Cynthia Freeland. That they're hanging out in Los Angeles doing online only. It is crazy what it has become based on where it was.
Yeah,
and,
I
and
think
the hype behind it has a lot to do with Mel Kiper.
He should be in it. It's going to be a long time before that happens because there's a lot of other broadcasts.
Yeah.
They don't have one.
Well,
the one broadcasting person in that contributors list is Ed Sable, who's the NFL Films guy. So they've got a lot of names to go through before they get to Mel Kiper. But the moment you get into draft coverage, Mel Kiper's the one.
Well,
he is the top guy. He's the one name you bring up, and you immediately think NFL draft.
But they do have the Pete Rozelle Radio TV Writing Award.
Yeah, John McClain's in it.
Yeah, John McClain's when you first walk through in Canton, he is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in that wing. So I don't know if they're categorizing him, Kiper, now as a contributor, or if they're going to start doing this, because what they've got Howard Katz, who was there last year. He was with NFL Films. And previous to that, it was John Facenda, the voice, the booming voice of NFL Films. But Joe Buck is on that list already.
Well, and I think John would tell us this. That's kind of JV Hall of Fame. With that wing of the Hall of Fame, it's not full-on enshrinement. That's where they put in the Hall of Fame.
That's where they put their broadcasters, though.
Yeah. Well, let's save this question for John, because I think there's an argument to be made on this contributors list that it can cross over and get the top name synonymous with the league and pro football or the draft to be on that list. I'm not asking for a ton, but some of the top guys, Pat Summerall, you brought up, Hutton is a great example. Some of those guys you could see getting in there one day. So maybe they'll happen. We'll ask John about it because he's the expert on all things Pro Football Hall of Fame. The man is a Hall of Famer himself.
No doubt.
He's in multiple Hall of Fames.
Well, Dylan Brooks is far from Hall of Fame worthy.
No.
LeBron, certainly, he's there. And the king, I mean, Dillon Brooks had to bow to him based on what we saw in this series. And it wasn't even close after the trash talk of Game 2, saying, hey, you're old. Talk to me when you're putting up a 40 spot. And that was when the Grizzlies had actually tied the series 1-1, headed back to L.A., and then that's all she wrote. Because Brooks didn't show up on the road after that.
And not only did not show up on the road, he didn't show up in the press conference afterward, which is a total weak beta move from Dillon Brooks. Run that mouth, talk your talk after you win one game in a playoff series. Talk all that talk before you even play LeBron James in the playoff series. And you and your team could not respond. This is a troubling trend with the Memphis Grizzlies. I know people in that city worship that team, and they should. But they are a team that is in need of some maturity, and they need to grow up. Ja Morant is the top example of that. He has got to grow into his own. He's got to be a better pro. And Dillon Brooks running his mouth to the leading scorer in the history of the NBA after they win one playoff game and then setting off a chain of events that eventually leads to them just getting absolutely destroyed in L.A. in an elimination game is a terrible look for Dillon Brooks, and in turn, a terrible look for the Memphis Grizzlies. He's a free agent. I don't think the Grizzlies will re-sign him. I think he'll move on. I think that this was all that bad, honestly. The way this thing played out, and him being fined for ducking the press conference is bad. Hutton brought it up also, him saying he wants to be used differently. Well, you can be used differently in Portland or wherever else you go because not wanted there anymore would be my guess.
Yeah, and this is the difference between Dillon Brooks and Draymond Green. Draymond Green is wanted everywhere.
And it's also,
right? I mean, you want him on your team.
No one likes Dillon Brooks.
That's the sense I get. Now, he may fit what the persona that Memphis wants to put out there with the grind city and all that. That fits, but then you have to back it up, right? And you can't just, cower to, a bad result and not speak to the media afterwards and just take the fine.
Oh, no doubt.
Face the music.
And not just that. I mean, let's look at two different franchises and how they conducted themselves in these playoffs. Kings, Grizzlies. Kings lost in 7 games, but they went to Golden State. They went to San Francisco and won a Game 6 to force a Game 7. They got beat by one of the greatest players ever, Steph Curry.
And they forced that guy to have a team meeting about it.
And they got beat by Steph, one of the greatest players of all time, right, in a Game 7.
Yes.
It happens. They're a young team that's building. Their fans are chanting Sacramento at the end of a 20-point loss in a Game 7 at home. There are brighter days ahead for that team. There can be brighter days ahead for Memphis. But I'll ask you, Hutton, who do you feel better about moving forward? The Kings and their core of players and the way they conducted themselves against champions, or the Grizzlies and their core guys and the way they conducted themselves late in the season and against a champion in LeBron James?
It's easy. No question it's Sacramento. Because with Memphis, all the questions have to do with off the court, starting with Ja Morant, where anyone else around Ja is taking the blame for it, including his parents. No longer. I mean, now it's on Ja Morant to step up and be that guy and be accountable and get rid of all of the extracurricular stuff if you're going to be great. He's already a great player, but just considered one of the greats. He's got that type of talent. And then you have Brooks, who loves to chirp and then post-series chirps about him not wanting, him not liking the way he was used. I mean, he's being exactly who he is, and he's already calling his shot saying, hey, if I come back, if I go anywhere, I'm going to continue to talk. I don't think that makes Memphis, scared of Dillon Brooks and what he's bringing to the team. But at the same time, I mean, there's an accountability aspect to it. And he woke up the monster, not just LeBron James, by the way. He woke up that team that following game in Game 3, where Anthony Davis, who didn't play well in Game 2, comes back and just has a great performance in that Game 3. And then they no-show as a team with a 40-point loss to L.A. after that series. That is what speaks volumes. They've got to shake something up there.
And I'm all for, guys being themselves. But you can't tell me that, you being yourself is, I'm going to go kick the sleeping dog where he lies, and that sleeping dog is someone who's definitely got the dog in them, and that's LeBron James.
Right.
And it's going to kickstart a big run in a playoff series. That's not just being you. That's being stupid.
Yeah.
So if you want to play with an edge, if you want to talk some trash in game, that's fine. But If you're going to put a microphone in front of your face and badmouth one of the greatest of all time as you're playing them early in a playoff series and then you get destroyed and then you duck out on the press conference, I've got no sympathy for that. And that's not something I'd want in my organization if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies. Maybe this is exactly what they want. And if that's the case, maybe they like getting put out in the first round every year so they can continue doing that. But I feel very differently about one team that got put out in the first round, the Kings, as opposed to another in the Warriors. De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis, I don't feel that way about the core with the Kings the way I do about the Grizzlies right now. They've got to shape up. They've got to get it right. They've got a good team. They've got one that can win an NBA championship eventually. But they got to be pros. And there's nothing professional about Dylan Brooks calling out LeBron James the way he did. And there's certainly nothing that's been professional about Ja Morant's entire season.
They can't even stay overnight in certain cities.
No.
Because they're so unprofessional on the road.
They got to get out of town in a
Specifically
plane
Ja
right
Morant.
after.
The Grizzlies have admitted that.
Going to lock the guy in his hotel room to make sure he gets some sleep.
Chad, one of the storylines that ESPN pushed over in post first round was the 3 black quarterbacks drafted in the top 4 picks, which we said on Friday we didn't even notice. It wasn't even a thing or a headline for us. Whenever they started to come off the board, the best quarterbacks were drafted where they were drafted. Well, I don't know if this is to stir the pot or if this is just a reaction to the entire draft as a whole. But the podcast, The Right Time with Bomani Jones, Dominic Foxworth was a guest and had this to say about the current NFL stance on quarterbacks and race.
There's going to be some rule changes in the NFL. They're going to do something. And you may be looking at me like I'm crazy, but wait till I explain something to you. Then you're going to be like, yep, they about to fix this. Who's the best quarterback in football? Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Who's the 2 highest paid players in all the league? Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. Who are the first 3 quarterbacks drafted in this draft? Black dudes. Yep, something's going down. Oh, we got a rule change coming down the pipe.
Hey, guys, as crazy as you think this is, I'll never forget the first time I saw Harry ever speak, and he was talking about the quarterback situation. And when Vic Culpepper, that running dude started coming, what they did was they started making those punitive roughing the passer penalties where if you just touch the guy on the helmet, that you got 15 yards, because they had to slow up those defensive backs. Guys, it turned into a problem when can't nobody even talk themselves into Will Levis, right? Like something has fundamentally changed.
And so you might be listening to this and thinking that Dominique is arguing that the NFL is just flat out, I hate black people racist. No, it's a different type of racism. It's because they think that you are I hate black people type of racist. They know that the stars of this entertainment property are the quarterbacks. That is who the people who are 3 degrees removed from you, who's a super fan, they don't know nobody but 4 or 5 quarterback names. And you know what they believe? The same way the NBA is probably concerned about all these international players. They know that the stars that sell consistently or that they have known to sell consistently are tall white dudes.
The secret sauce for viewership is white. That's the unspoken part of the rise of the popularity in women's college basketball.
Yeah.
They ain't just still got white girls. They cold. Something you can root for.
They need to go down to the lower levels. And I don't know if it's baseball. I don't know if it's soccer. I don't know what these cold white dude athletes are playing, but they need to get them to start playing quarterback so that we can get some more Josh Allens and Joe Herbert. Joe Herberts. I'm combining Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Need to get some more of them in the league, because if we get to a situation where it's a bunch of Lamar Jacksons and Jalen Hurts the face of the league, the NFL is going to be concerned, not because they care who their labor is, it's because they think that y'all care who the labor is.
They going to get so desperate, somebody going to try to get Mike Trout to convert.
I mean, and that was Bomani Jones and Dominic Foxworth. Chad, did they leave out Patrick Mahomes on purpose, the face of the NFL?
I don't know. Is that racist to leave him out by them? Is it because
it's not, Joe Burrow? And
is it because he's
Justin
a mixed
Herbert.
race that they leave him out? Are they being racist in that? Here's the problem. If you are searching for treachery and racism around every corner, or you are seeking to constantly be offended by someone spouting racism or crying about that at all times, this is what you turn into, are these 2 dudes that are making a completely incoherent argument that absolutely makes no sense and is not based in fact at all. How does creating rules to protect quarterbacks in some way racist at the moment that more black quarterbacks are entering the league? I don't follow the logic of what they're saying. They talked about when Michael Vick and Dante Culpepper came in, they started having roughing the passer rules. Okay, they benefit from that too. What am I missing on that? It's an issue of trying to protect the biggest investment on each team, the quarterback, whether that quarterback be white or black. We just had 3 quarterbacks go in the top 5. And as Hutton, as you had mentioned, we said it today, ESPN brings to our attention that all 3 are black. I didn't even think about that as a thing. That's a sign of how much progress we've made. The one smart thing they said in that, and it was a passing comment, is that, yes, race played a big part in women's basketball ascension with Caitlin Clark and an all-white Iowa team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not denying that because it's a sport. Wait for it. We talk about representation all the time, that a lot of white people probably watch and don't feel that represented when they watch the game. So here's this group of corn-fed white chicks that are dominating the game and some girl who looks like their niece out there dropping 40 on people, and they might tune in a little bit more. It's no different than a black person that wants to tune in to shows or movies or sports at times where they feel more represented. That's not racism. That's representation that everyone's constantly preaching. That's what that is. It's not being racist. You don't root against the team that's all black because they're black. You may watch more because someone looks like you that's playing the sport. But here's the beauty of the NFL. No one gives a damn. They watch it no matter what. Go look at some of the top-rated games of all time. I guarantee you they feature black quarterback Patrick Mahomes in some of those games. He's in every commercial break on TV. He gets every bit the attention, the commercials, the money that Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers or any of these tall white dudes that you mentioned have ever received. This is not a racist thing. You know what we like in the NFL? Good quarterbacks. You know what there are a lot of in the NFL right now? Good black quarterbacks. That is great. No one's watching and thinking, I'm not going to root for them because they're black. You are creating something that doesn't exist. And this is a lesson. If you're constantly trying to be outraged or constantly looking for racism or treachery around every corner, you're going to find it even when it doesn't exist. I wish this stuff would go away.
Yeah, and they
so much.
Also leave out the highest paid player, which is Deshaun Watson. With the fully guaranteed contract.
And Lamar Jackson's the other highest paid player based on annual salary.
Yeah, but you go through Lamar Jackson and Hurts, and you start to stack all these contracts up, and no one's coming close. Even the white dudes, not even coming close to what Deshaun Watson received in Cleveland.
And give me a break. The league's going to change the rules to appease some, made up group of racist football fans that only want to see white quarterbacks. So now we got to make a rule that benefits white quarterbacks over. What are we talking about? You're bringing us
racist
back.
only to the race of a single position with 10 others on the field.
If you want to preach progressive and being progressive and progressing, stop pulling everything back 40 years.
Yeah.
We are progressing. The fact that we just saw a draft and no one even thought that the first 3 quarterbacks were black is progress.
Well, and
so
somehow,
let's stop putting the truck in reverse and going beep, beep, beep. Oh, now the league's going to come back and change the rules to benefit the whites. Give me a break, guys. Come on.
Coming up, Armando Salguero will join us. He was in Kansas City. He's back, and there's a lot to break down from the big headlines over specifically the first 2 days of the draft. We got Armando's take next on Hot Mic.
My primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you gotta keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Armando Salguero joins us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the Outkick network. Armando with Nissan Stadium in the background. Will Levis, a big talking point And a talking point for ESPN, Armando, was the 3 quarterbacks in the top 4, all black. I didn't even notice it. Did you?
Well, I couldn't help but notice it because I was in the draft interview room, and the same reporter, time after time after time, asked the same question of the 3 black quarterbacks. How does it feel to be making history as a black quarterback being drafted atop the NFL draft? And it was fine. That, I guess that's the narrative that you're going to go with, the identity politics thing. I loved Anthony Richardson's answer. And his answer was, well, I love that we were drafted one after another, but not because we're black. I love that we were drafted because we've been through a lot together. We have we're very close to each other. We've known each other since the elite quarterback camps back in the day. And it wasn't about race for him. It was about relationship for him.
I'm sure that at least someone, though, it would have been about race had Will Levis gone fourth and not Anthony Richardson. He fell to the second round if it was reversed. But it wasn't reversed, Armando, and you got Will Levis now with the Titans, second pick of the second round. When you compare the 2 spots now, those quarterbacks are in, both have questions about their play in college. There's more personality questions about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. By all accounts, he seems like a great young guy. And Will Levis, there are some questions about his personality and attitude. But in terms of landing spot and position of where they're going to start their career, who got it better, Will Levis or Anthony Richardson?
I think Anthony Richardson got it better. And that's because he is now under the tutelage of Shane Steichen, who, I don't know, the last couple of years, he developed Justin Herbert, and then he got bored with that and went and developed Jalen Hurts. And then he got bored with that, and now he's the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. So the track record is there, and the track record is there in addressing quarterbacks that come to you not ready-made and with some serious questions. I think people forget that Justin Herbert was not the second pick of the 2020 draft. Justin Herbert was drafted, I believe, 6th overall, and he was the 3rd quarterback picked after Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa. And the reason that happened is because people said, well, he's too shy, he's too introverted, his accuracy's not all that great. And Shane took that, pile of clay and molded it into the elite quarterback right now. And so I'm thinking that whatever he did there, I'm definitely believing that he can do with Anthony Richardson.
Armando, which of these of the drafts did you look at and go, what are they thinking here? Where is this team going versus what they should be doing?
Yeah, the New York Jets, oddly enough. So the Jets, they went out and got some quarterback. What's his name? The 37 or 38
Ryan Fitzpatrick,
guy.
Yeah, great player.
Yeah. So they make this big splash with Aaron Rodgers, and you figure, okay, well, the best thing for Aaron Rodgers is to protect Aaron Rodgers. And you figured that they would do that at the offensive tackle position, and they didn't. And so now what's going to happen is they've got Mekhi Becton as the starting right tackle, who is unreliable and has been unreliable for years. And they've got 37-year-old Dwayne Brown as the starting left tackle. And did I mention he's 37 years old? And God bless him. He's been a great player throughout his career, but he's 37 years old. So if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm looking down that depth chart when I get to camp. Actually, he's already at their workouts this offseason. And I make really good friends with the 3rd tackle on the roster, because my guess is that third tackle will be playing for the New York Jets at some point in 2023, and Aaron Rodgers needs him to be really good.
Which day 2 quarterback selection did you like more? Will Levis behind Ryan Tannehill or Hendon Hooker now, the backup in Detroit?
Let me just say this. Philosophically, I love what the Tennessee Titans did because they went and got aggressive and found a quarterback that supposedly will be their quarterback of the future, if not their quarterback competition of the future with Malik Willis next year. So that philosophically makes a lot of sense to me. But realistically, I'm with Withrow right here. I don't like the guy that much.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Go on. Yes. Keep going. Keep going, Armando. Yeah.
There's something off there that I just can't wrap my arms around. And plus, if I tried, he'd push me away anyway because he's not that warm leader, brotherhood type guy, it doesn't feel like to me. So that's my problem there. It's not about the stats. You know, he threw 23 interceptions his last 2 seasons at Kentucky. Well, Peyton Manning threw 23 interceptions his last 2 seasons at Tennessee, and that wasn't an issue. And Dan Marino threw a bunch of interceptions at Pitt his senior season, and that wasn't an issue. It's a character personality thing that I have some questions about. I have no such questions about Hendon Hooker. None. That guy is a leader. He is a guy that is a leader of men and will display that in college at 2 schools and will display that in the NFL. And so I just happen to like the Hendon Hooker pick more than I do the Will Levis pick.
And I know you're with us. We really like the C.J. Stroud selection by Houston. They got it right. They, at the end of all this, maybe they were always channeling C.J. Stroud at number 2, but they took the quarterback. And you were a part of our discussion last week of don't overthink this. Stop being Houston Texans football and change up the line of thinking and how they go about building their roster. And they got it right, regardless of if you agree or not to move back up and get Will Anderson. They took the player at 2 that they should have.
Yeah, you guys had an outstanding guest last week who said that regardless of who is picking, C.J. Stroud would be the number 2 overall pick. What was that guy's name?
Nailed it. Ryan Fitzpatrick also. He's a great guest on this show as well.
Does it all.
Oh, good job, Armando. Well played.
No, I like the fact that they did that, and I like the fact that they went back and got Will Anderson. It was a meeting of the minds between the Texans and the Arizona Cardinals because you've got the Texans that are in that spot where they have a lot of draft resources from the Deshaun Watson trade, and it's time for them to start turning draft resources into really good players. Meanwhile, the Arizona Cardinals are going to suck in 2023. And so I think they know this. And so they now gather draft resources for 2024. And by the way, by moving down, they still got an outstanding offensive tackle in Paris Johnson. So they did good. Houston did good by grabbing those 2 guys. And I like C.J. Stroud. I think C.J. Stroud is going to be a good quarterback.
Let's compare and contrast again with the 2 running backs taken in the first round because these are 2 of the more divisive picks in that first round. I like the Bijan Robinson pick for the Falcons, but critics will point out that the Falcons were a great rushing team a year ago with Cordero Patterson, and you didn't need to invest a top 10 pick in a running back with Bijan Robinson. And then the Lions take Jahmyr Gibbs way higher than even Jahmyr Gibbs thought he was going to go in the NFL draft, and they later trade away DeAndre Swift, so you know he's the guy now in Detroit. Which of those 2 moves, Armando, did you like better than the other? Did you like either of them? Did you like both of them?
Yeah. So let's establish this. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a good player. I really do. He's got the pedigree, he's got the production, the tape, the character, the whole deal. I just don't think it's a good value. Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 overall. They couldn't trade down and do this because I think they could have. And they'll say that they couldn't have because someone would have grabbed them. Okay, I still don't like it because I don't think it's a good value. I like the Robinson pick. I like it where it happened. I think that Arthur Smith will make good use of him. And I don't see it as a depth chart thing. I see it as a matchup thing for the Falcons in that guy, he will be on the field at the same time as Cordell Patterson at times next year, Chad. So it's a spacing matchup thing for Arthur Smith. And that guy is a playmaker and a playmaker at multiple positions. So he is going to, as a playmaker, I think they are defined by the many plays that they make. And if the Falcons can get themselves together with their quarterback situation with Ritter, they're going to be fine.
Armando, did anyone have a better weekend than Lamar Jackson? He signs that contract. He gets paid. No agent or with an agent. He's still the highest paid player on average annual value right now at $52 million. Plus, they go in and invest in Zay Flowers, who is immediately FaceTiming with Odell Beckham Jr. What do you make of the weekend of Baltimore?
Yeah, the weekend of Baltimore for Lamar Jackson includes $7.8 million in agent fees that he saved himself because basically he goes his contract, right? Yeah. Jalen Hurts, his agent, basically negotiated Lamar Jackson's contract plus $1 million or plus $2 million. It's like whatever he got, let's add $1 million and I'm there. And so God bless him for that. Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. now with Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. That's a nice little passing game, assuming that Lamar is healthy in November, December, and January. I don't like the fact that they didn't address their defensive backfield. They're going to need to sign a veteran corner here pretty soon.
Armando, thanks for all the great coverage of last week. It was outstanding at Outkick, and hopefully you're eating something other than barbecue today.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm kind of barbecued out, to be honest with you.
A lot of different ways you can do that, but, I mean, that's all Kansas City does, right?
He's working on his own burnt ends recipe right now that he got back to Florida. He's like, I can do this.
Barbecued pork, barbecued beef, barbecued chicken. It's like, do you people, I don't know, stew anything?
Nothing.
Or, pasta?
Armando's calling butchers in Florida trying to find a whole hog right now, feeling like he can do it himself after a week of consuming KC barbecue.
South Beach style.
Yes.
Armando, thank you, man.
All right, man.
Armando Salguero, Outkick's senior NFL writer who joins us on Thursdays. We'll catch back up with him later this week, and it's been a great discussion with him over the draft and recapping what we saw over the weekend today.
I find barbecue to be like pizza in that I could always find myself in the mood for it. It's one of those food that it's got enough variation.
Yes, that's it. Not
of
the
what
same
you can
thing.
order. Yeah, but like if you were going to go barbecue restaurant or just go pizza, you can get the different top. Like you can mix it up enough to where it doesn't feel like the same thing over and over, and it's all very delicious.
Chad, somehow the Toronto Maple Leafs are crying poor when it comes to their broadcast team, and we'll give an example of this. Plus,
tough times in Canada.
Bruins play-by-play voice Jack Edwards, and one of the worst calls you'll hear as the Bruins are eliminated, and what he compared the loss to, and just how odd it all sounds. That's straight ahead on Hot Mic.
notice is every pitcher will do this or this or this, and that's to get moisture for this. Okay, this is rosin, and the rosin bag, if you can probably see this, it's coming out. There's a little dust, right? It's like a little fine powder. Of itself, it's not sticky. Like I have rosin in my hand, it's not sticky. However, the second I do this, when I'm sweating, I make the rosin sticky. That's when I go back to the ball and rub the ball up to give me a little more adhesion between my hand and the ball. Now, here's the thing. If you think about this, if I put a fine powder on my hand and then I make that powder wet that makes it sticky, any dirt that I come in contact with is going to stick to my hand. All right. So what you're going to see over the course of a couple innings will be my hand will start to darken because it might look like a substance, but it's not. It's just sticky rosin that has dirt in it. Now, I was a guy, so here's the thing. I threw a split finger fastball, right? I did not want the ball to stick to my fingers ever. So I didn't want rosin in between my fingers. So I would wash the insides of my fingers between innings with alcohol if it got too sticky. However, there are other guys that throw sinkers, certain breaking balls, who will want the ball to be extra sticky, and they'll just let their hand muddy up. Now, the umpires can certainly say, hey, listen, you got to wash it off. That's fine. But they have to acknowledge that just washing it off isn't going to change the fact that it's sticky, because you go back to the rosin, you have more moisture, it gets stickier. Your hand's going to look dark no matter what, right? And if you touch your hat all the time, you'll see that Major League Baseball players' hats a lot of times will get dark under the brim or dark at the cap. Also, guys like Gaylord Perry that used to cheat, they would use Vaseline on the inside of their caps. They would use Vaseline on the inside of their bottom lower lip because it stayed there. And you see guys that used to do this a lot. That was what they were doing, and then they'd lick their hands. Anyway, so your hand's going to be, so Max's hand was clearly in a non-agreeable state to the umpires. He went back. I'm sure he watched it. But he came back, and you could see the way he was arguing. He didn't do, in his mind, he didn't do it. He followed their orders. He did what they said to do. And this ambiguous rule needs to be fixed and changed. Rosin, I don't know how you do that, but the umpires are put in a really bad situation now, once again, because they're not given a set rules of engagement. And anytime you give somebody the ability to engage without rules defined, you have massive problems.
White Sox pitcher Louis Giolito left Tuesday's game versus the Phillies after 6 innings with a no-hitter. He had thrown 102 pitches, but they shut him down. The no-hitter was broken up by the relievers. I can't imagine. I think I know what you're going to say, but any chance you get off the hill with a no-hitter after 6?
So whoever's back at the control center with the curse button, be ready. There's no chance. None that I come out of the game. And to the point where if you told me I was coming out, I would still go out to the mound and force you to have all 3 of us standing on the mound at some point. No chance. And when I played, that probably wouldn't have happened. It's a different game now. There are and guys being okay with it, I think, is an enormous red flag to how these guys are being raised in the minor leagues. Yes, you respect your manager and your coach, but at some point you earn the right to help coach yourself if you're responsible and your coach trusts you and stuff like that. And no, none, absolutely none.
Hot Mic rolls on with Hunt and Withrow. Glad you're with us across the Outkick network. Chad, you know how I just have a disdain for hotels that, claim that they're saving the environment for not coming in and, changing out towels and stuff, right?
Convenient excuses to be lazy.
Right. And it's all whatever you want to do there. But not just be lazy. They don't want to tell you that, hey, we're not going to clean your stuff because we're saving money. That's what it comes down to. They don't have as many laundry loads to worry about based on that. And they're just flat out telling you with a little note in your bathroom. There's one example. The Toronto Maple Leafs won a playoff series for the first time in 19 years. And here their radio play-by-play voice, Joe Bowen, he's got the game-winning call. And he got it wrong. And the way he describes it is, they score. Holy Mackinac, they score. Morgan Riley, Mo Riley. The Leafs have won it. They're going to the second round. It was John Tavares, though, who scored off a deflection. And he started to get crushed by this from fans on social media, saying, like, this is, this is awful, fan criticism. Turns out he's having to call this off a monitor because the team's not traveling their radio crew in the postseason. And they're saving like roughly $10,000 by not doing this per series to do it. Like if this were the Atlanta Thrashers and they were crying poor, at some point you're like, okay, they're about to bolt. But we're talking about Toronto in this. And it's just for the fan base to hear that and for the announcer to have to call this off. And he admitted, he's like, hey, I'm calling this game off a monitor, and it looked like Riley scored the goal. My apologies. I feel for these guys, man, because they stopped traveling during COVID, and then these companies said, hey, we're going to continue to save money. And the biggest companies, some of the biggest companies are crying poor when the fact is they're not. They're just not spending money so they can keep it in their pocket instead of delivering for sports fans.
It's ridiculous. And here's what bothers me more than anything about it is I'm sure they're receiving instruction to not say that they're not traveling throughout the broadcast. And he only could say this after the fact because he was getting crushed. I hate the fakeness about that.
Yeah.
Hey, let's pretend like you're there. You know what I mean? Like, I bet they're being told not to say, hey, you were doing this from home.
You want to, though, as a broadcaster. You want to pretend that you're there and delivering the story. That's part of the crap that goes on behind the scenes, though. It's just call off the monitor. No one will notice. But then you're getting stuff like Courtney chimed in with Joe Bowen and says, oh, you got 2 of the 3 overtime goals wrong just this series. Don't get me wrong, I love Bowen, but it's a tough look. And so Bowen had to respond to that. When the TV shot doesn't show that Tavares is celebrating because it was off him until well after the fact, it's rather difficult to make the call off a TV monitor. By the initial celebration, it appeared Morgan Riley had scored. My bad.
Is it really that much money to just travel them on with the team?
Per the Athletic, it would cost an estimated $10,000 to send the broadcasters to road games during a 7-game series. But keep in mind, this is their first 19 years, and they're doing this. Meanwhile, in Boston, one of the biggest upsets happened in Florida, and it produced one of the worst play-by-play calls I've heard from Jack Edwards, or just period. The game-winning goal from the Boston Bruins' point of view, where he compares this loss to the Hindenburg.
On him. Verhaeghe wins the series for Florida, and this joyride ends in a Hindenburg-like ending. The Bruins are the second record-setting team in a row to drop the series in the first round.
So there's Jack Edwards there. I have searched to make sure that...
I was going to say the same thing.
Did he have a stroke?
Yeah, or is he ill in some way before I said anything?
He sounds drunk while he's calling this. And, there are other stories where he's having to get with Maroon and other things in the locker room over the course of the season. It's just has not been in the right direction with Edwards. But there is the game-winning goal in overtime that Boston Bruins fans tuned in to listen for, as they had Stanley Cup aspirations all year. That's bad.
That was bad. The first thing I had to search was Jack Edwards' illness before I said anything. It was a bad call, regardless. There's a comedy bit from a stand-up comic, hilarious, Brian Regan, about trying to pull words into your mouth after you started saying them. And he talks about seeing a woman who's a little bigger and assuming that she's pregnant and going up and saying, "When's that baby?" And you can't bring the word baby back in as you're asking when the baby is due. That's what it reminded me of when he said Hindenburg. He starts to pull it back in slowly as he's just another and can't pull the word back in as he's saying it, knowing it's probably really dumb to say that in that moment.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I got from that call from Jack Edwards.
And the Bruins won 65 games in the regular season, first-round playoff loss. That's definitely a, hitting a wall moment for that
their
team.
coach, by the way, had a much better response than Giannis did in terms of.
Oh, really?
He asked, "What word would you use to describe that?" And he said, "Well, a bunch of words come to mind: disappointment, surprise."
Okay.
And he said, "I'm going to be very hurt for a while, but then we'll eventually look back and look at, I like coaching this group all year." But he said the first word was disappointment about losing that game in that fashion and losing the lead in the third period late also.
And they rallied during the series. Down 2-0, took a 3-2 lead, and then they lose there in Game 7. Coming up, Steph Curry did not go down in Game 7. Plus, our biggest takeaways from the NFL Draft. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Glad you're with us. Just like that, the final hours here on this Monday edition. We've been recapping the NFL draft, recapping what we've seen from the NBA playoffs and more. And had some great guests. Ari Miroff will join us coming up in about 20 minutes from the 33rdteam.com. Great follow on social as well with all of his deciphering of what is news, what is not from all the different markets across the league. Ari is with us coming up in about 20 minutes. Chad, showing up and showing out with Steph Curry this past weekend. Game 7 performance against Sacramento. The Kings had no answer, and honestly, no one does when he hits a stride like this.
50 points, a record for a Game 7 in NBA history. Incredible performance. Coming off a players' meeting where Steph Curry, according to Draymond Green, told the team, if you're going to get into your emotions, don't even make the trip to Sacramento for this Game 7. And he just decided, hey, no one else is stepping up. I'm going to have to win this game on my own. It's exactly what he did. Warriors 120, Kings 100. Warriors advance now to the next series. They get to continue to defend their championship from last year. I'm blown away by Steph Curry repeatedly.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that you start to, in a crazy way, take for granted because of all the success now, because of the multiple championships. And I watched that performance yesterday, and I think, how dare I take this guy for granted. He's one of the all-time greats. He's one of the great stories in NBA history. He's obviously not the biggest guy on the floor, but he gets 8 rebounds and 6 assists in that game as well. Blown away by Steph Curry. Blown away by the fan support in Sacramento also. It's pretty cool. You know, it is a zero-sum game, and it's professional sports. It's about winning and losing. But I love the fact that Sacramento fans are chanting Sacramento for the effort their team gave and just getting them back that extra game. Going to San Francisco and winning on the Warriors' home court to force a Game 7 was almost another gift to that fan base to get one more game in that arena. It was really cool to see that send-off for a team that just lost by 20 in a Game 7. And I do feel like we're seeing the start of something with the Kings.
Too, yeah.
I think that's not the end of their story. That ended a 17-year playoff drought just to get to the playoffs this year. We're going to see more of them moving forward.
And, I mean, have we plateaued with Memphis? We don't really know the answer to that yet. But in comparing Memphis to Sacramento, you're seeing the climb of what the Kings are doing. And, you know, at the beginning of the series, I brought up the fact, you know, it kind of gave me the same feel over that Game 1 and Game 2 weekend that Golden State did back in the day when they were making the climb, you know? And the crowd plays into that, though. You know, the home atmosphere for Sacramento, what they're doing there, plays into the vibe of not just the city and the team, but the momentum that they have moving forward. Opposite for me with Memphis.
And
based on all the questions.
And to win a title, it's not just about getting the right talent on the team. It's about that right talent being the right person and the right people. And I'm not sure Ja Morant is that right now. He's got to prove it this next year. I don't buy that they're going to advance deep in the playoffs and win a title with him as their leader until he shows me a little more of how he can lead as a person. Because, you know, we've seen it before with plenty of teams where you get good talent, but either there's a super team that's in their way that they can't get past, or that great talent, they're great players. They're just not the right core group or core person to lead you all the way. Giannis is the right type of person. That's why Milwaukee's won a title. I mean, you can go down the list. The Warriors with Steph Curry being led by him and Klay Thompson. And even Draymond Green is the right type of teammate that you want. You know, the rest of the league probably doesn't like some of his antics. Certainly the commissioner doesn't like his antics, but the right type of teammate you need to win a title. On down the list, LeBron James. Look at those that win championships. They've got the talent, but they've also got the leader who's made of the right stuff on the court to propel you to the ultimate level. I'm not seeing that with the Memphis Grizzlies. Can De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk and Domantas Sabonis be that for the Sacramento Kings? Maybe. Haven't really seen enough. They've been in one playoff series, so I haven't seen enough to know yet, but I like what I see more out of them than the Grizzlies on the flip side because I feel like they're lacking, quite frankly, with that professionalism and leadership you need to ultimately win a title.
Yep. They've got to switch some things up there. Chad, the grades are out across the NFL, right? All the analysts who had mocks and they were covering the NFL draft from the weekend, including us, we're going to give our favorite picks and our worst drafts, head scratchers coming up. But really, what we're doing is judging about 3 years too soon with these players because we're basing this off of grades and expectations of where a player should go or the value of said player instead of really knowing the consensus of the NFL and what these teams thought of the guy. We know certainly the quarterbacks. The Georgia players, we can get into this later this week. Georgia players, for where they were, really, they didn't fall out of the first round, but they didn't go as high as what many would have expected 4 months ago.
With Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith.
And Nolan Smith, yeah. So, I mean, and there are other examples across the board. But I think the Will Levis grade and the consensus across media coverage, the Titans received an A for their draft overall, is based on the outcome that the consensus model that Will Levis could have been a third overall quarterback selected, was definitely a first-round quarterback that should have been selected. ESPN even put out analytics saying that it was a 0.01% chance that he would not have been drafted in the first round with 31 picks. I think the grades are propped up to make it look like, well, this team got great value, when really we've been preaching for the last 2 months that the value was not there for where everyone had Levis mocked. And I think case in point on the grades for the NFL and how the media goes about doing this, Tennessee's a great example of not drafting or assessing where they are at wide receiver until the 7th round and drafting Will Levis, who is going to back up Ryan Tannehill, drafting a backup running back to sub in for Derrick Henry, and not addressing the wide receiver glaring issue. That is a prime example of why you shouldn't just tune in and check out, oh, here's great value. It's an A across the board because they drafted players that fell to them and then they move up and get them, even though it may not make sense for 2023. I just don't buy into it.
I don't either. And you're hitting on something that is something I want to stress also. The value piece of it and how we determine value is really just how we determine the guesses of draft analysts, right?
Yeah,
it's all
and a lot of the analysts get it
an
right
educated guess
on the tiers.
Yeah.
A lot of the players that you expect to go round one did go round one.
But I think almost everyone had Will Levis higher than round 2.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of anyone that had that. But point being, if we looked at everyone's big board, maybe every NFL team had him about there. So the Titans drafted a guy at about the spot where he was going to go, and then the perception of that draft pick nationally would be very different if that was the case,
right?
As opposed to, oh, this guy was top 10, and they got him pick number 33, second pick of round 2. And I'm thinking, no, they probably just got a second rounder early in the second round, and they value that player. I hate this for the Titans. I've been very upfront about
we'll
Will
dive in on the
Levis
full class, but yeah,
being the wrong guy, and we'll talk about hits and misses in the draft. But I want to dispel the notion because I've gone through and read national draft analysts giving their grades for every draft class. And we'll do the same. But we fully admit this is not something that is definitive right now. This is our opinion of what we saw.
Yeah, right.
And the team that I'm going to give eventually as my favorite team in the draft may end up being terrible this draft class 2 or 3 years from now. And the one that's the worst may be the best. We can admit that. But I do want to dispel the whole thing that, well, the Titans drafted this guy who was a top 5 pick. No, he's not. He's a second rounder. The NFL showed us that. I don't think that he fell as much as he was overhyped by virtually everyone in media. I think with NFL teams, he's about where he was all along. I really believe that. I think he fell because he was overhyped by everyone else. And that's the perception of falling that really wasn't even there.
There was one player selected from an HBCU in this year's draft, and Deion Sanders, of course, coached him at Jackson State. Former coach at Jackson State turned Colorado, tweeted on Saturday that he was ashamed that only one player from an HBCU was selected through the 7 rounds. Isaiah Bolden is the player this year, and I believe the Patriots selected him in the 7th round. But look, I mean, this is, and he tweeted out that he's proud of Isaiah. You deserve to be drafted much higher, but I'm truly proud of you. I know how much you want this. I'm ashamed of all the other 31 NFL teams who couldn't find draft value in all of the talented HBCU players, and we had 3 more draft-worthy players at Jackson State. Now, Deion, now at Colorado, did take, I believe, half a dozen, maybe 7 players from Jackson State with him to Colorado. So he is not just preaching here, he's also delivering on trying to show that the talent was already there and it's not just being built up and it's worthy of playing at Colorado. That's fine. But there were only 10 players selected from the FCS this past weekend in the NFL draft.
Oh.
So when you take in totality, you're either Division I or you're not. And that's where the talent pool's coming from. I'm not surprised to see one HBCU player selected, especially when you go through the free agent process after the draft of the undrafteds. And again, the FCS in total had 10 players selected. I'm not shocked to see that one player from the HBCU was selected. Can there be more? I'm sure there can be. But in the 7th round, it's low, and the Patriots wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be competing in a free agent contract with anyone else. So you take him there based on need and traits. I wish Bolden nothing but the best. But I think that the presence of Deion with the HBCUs is only going to enhance that. It's certainly not going to undermine what they're doing or the players that have the chance. If you are draft eligible, the league will find you, especially if you played for Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I don't think there's any racism or anything behind it. It is unfortunate that only one HBCU player was drafted. I don't think if Deion's pointing out that, well, I'm ashamed because the NFL's not scouting HBCUs to the same level, I don't really buy that either. Like you said, Hutton, if you're good enough, the league will find you, and they're going to find out about you one way or the other. Deion left an HBCU for Colorado. So if Deion himself left for a better opportunity at Colorado, there are a lot of players who are passing up the opportunity to go to an HBCU to go to a program, whether they feel like it's a better school and or they're going to get looked at by the NFL more or play against better competition. And I don't know that there's a quick fix for that.
Well,
it's unfortunate, but I don't know that there's an easy way to fix that issue.
The league has hosted now for the 2nd consecutive year, I believe. The HBCU has their own combine. And they introduced this in either 2020 or 2021, and all 32 teams were represented at that combine. But that's the first time they had done anything like that. I think Deion, in large part, is a reason for that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we'll see more and more of opportunities. And honestly, I mean, we've already seen players that played for him. They're now playing D1 at Colorado because of Deion Sanders. And there are a handful of HBCU players that were all-time greats in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
David in our YouTube chat, Hutton, based on your idea, you can't tell until 3 years later. He says, great segment idea is this week we should grade the 2020 NFL draft.
Okay.
Instead of grading the previous draft, we're always taking suggestions from viewers and listeners of the show. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and you
everyone
can
else can
compare it.
grade this draft. We're going to do that today.
Well, I
but you
need to
can
know-
also look back and say,
I want to know who
here's
had the
what
A's.
happened.
I want to know who graded where
And
first.
we can go back and grade the graders.
No doubt. Yeah.
Who had A pluses on this 2020 draft class that clearly is an A plus now, 3 years later?
Jerry Jones says that Ezekiel Elliott could be back in the mix with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that's a big surprise as long as Zeke wants to take the huge pay cut to go back there and he doesn't get more money on the open market, say from Cincinnati or elsewhere, for the veteran minimum that many think he's going to have to take, maybe a signing bonus up front. But Cincinnati's, I think, out of it just based on the money they're going to have to spend moving forward on Burrow and others. Meanwhile, it makes sense to bring back Zeke in Dallas if, in fact, they can get a deal worked out monetarily where he's been on the open market now for a while. And Jerry's probably feeling pretty good about that opportunity. Chad, and then what a moment, speaking of Dallas, the Cowboys scout who had the chance to, Chris Vaughn, who had the chance to call his son, Deuce, to let him know he was being drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. If you haven't seen the video, you got to see it. It is awesome. Maybe the best moment of the weekend, quite frankly, happened in the Dallas Cowboys draft room.
And Deuce's son is 5'5", 5'5" running back at Kansas State. Terrific player. Lots of fun to watch. Really cool story. Really cool moment.
Coming up, Ari Miroff will join us. Looking forward to the conversation from the 33rdteam.com, and we'll get his assessment of the quarterbacks. The biggest discussion points from the QBs is Will Levis. And from his vantage point, which draft just made sense based on the trajectory of an organization? We'll get his answer on that as well straight ahead on Hot Mic.
My primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you gotta keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up. Quit littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
And people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Hot Mic rolls on across the Outkick network. Hutton and Withrow here. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, Jim Trotter, longtime NFL reporter, just diving back in on the FCS players. We had the HBCU discussion.
Yeah.
So 10 selected this past draft, this past weekend. Only 41 out of nearly 1,200 selections were from FCS schools in the past 4 drafts. And when you start to look at that, it's jarring. But Albert Breer has an interesting reason for that. He says, hey, while certainly the talent pool there is, 41 out of 1,200 picks, the transfer portal. Because if you're a freshman or sophomore and you improve, you're bolting, you're moving up to the next level. You're being, you're poached. You're being recruited, and you're not at the FCS level very long.
That's a great point. I wonder what percentage of those guys started FCS and ended FBS. If we could go back and see that. Guys who left smaller
throughout
programs.
the entire draft.
Yeah. And then what the percentage looks like if you factor that in.
Yeah.
Anyone who spent any amount of time at an FCS and then gets drafted from an FBS, what does that number look like?
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's 99% the reason is the portal.
Yep.
And thinking back and when it was implemented and why, plus you had the extra year for COVID and everything else built in, guys were moving all over the place. And if you were good at that level, the college scouts, the analysts, the coaches, the recruiters, they're finding you before the NFL scouts do in many cases. Hit us up with your thoughts at Outkick on social. You can also follow the YouTube channel. Just search out Outkick on YouTube if you haven't already. We hope you'll subscribe there. Some of the bigger storylines across the NFL are discussed at the 33rdteam.com through players, coaches, and analysts and contributors, much like our next guest who we had the chance to catch up with earlier today to recap the NFL draft. Here is Ari Maroff. Ari, thanks so much for the time, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. But draft is like one of my favorite times of the year. So it was a great weekend around the NFL.
When we look back on this draft, Ari, 3 years from now, how do you believe we will define the 2023 NFL draft?
Wow, what a deep question to start over here. It's interesting. I think we're going to look back at the quarterbacks. I mean, that's really what every draft is. You always look back at the quarterbacks. And the thing that was really the fascinating part about the quarterbacks this year is that 3 out of the top 4 ones went to the same division, right? So when you have that happening, these guys play each other twice a year. You're going to know right away, all right, that team made a mistake. That team made the right one. So when Stroud is starting right away for Houston, I would assume Richardson is going to compete to start with Gardner Minshew. And then Levis, probably Tannehill will start off. But eventually we're going to see, did Houston make the right decision with Stroud? Should they really taken Richardson, the upside guy? And then should teams have allowed Levis to drop? I mean, Irsay openly said that if Richardson wasn't there, we were taking Levis. So will they look back at that eventually? And then this quarterback is now haunting you for the next 10, 15 years. So I think that's the one we're going to be looking back on. It's always the quarterbacks, but the fact they all went to the same division is really what makes it very intriguing.
Ari Maroff, our guest from the 33rdteam.com, where you can go and see all the grades for your favorite team right now, the 33rdteam.com. All right, so I'm fascinated by this question with the quarterback specifically. The 3 that get drafted high versus the 2 where a team has a veteran in front of them in Will Levis and Hendon Hooker in Detroit, where they have a chance to develop for maybe a year. Some are calling it a redshirt year. Maybe it's not quite that, but it could be. And comparing those 2 and the trajectory they're on versus the other spots where Anthony Richardson will be tossed into the fire, the same as what's going on in Houston and Carolina. Specifically with Levis, that's the fascinating story because everyone passed on him. And now he has a chance to work behind Tannehill.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me just say with Levis, like I truly believe when it comes to quarterbacks, for Levis, it would have been better for him to be drafted at 33 than to be drafted at 30, simply because of the 5th-year option element in all of this, right? Because if he does become a legitimate starter, eventually this could become a benefit for him financially. And we've seen Jalen Hurts and Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott take advantage of that for being non-first-round picks. But yeah, I mean, there is an element of all of this where back in the day, sitting quarterbacks was a thing, and now it's like not really a thing anymore, right? I mean, Stroud's going to be starting right away. Young will be starting right away. Richardson, everyone throughout the draft process was like, you really have to wait with him. Do not throw him into the fire. I mean, we kind of saw the same thing last year with Malik Willis, where the entire draft process was do not throw him in the fire right away, and the Titans did that, and then they regretted it right away. I mean, they're clearly pushing him away. So there is a benefit for a Will Levis and even a Hendon Hooker to sit behind somebody, learn what the NFL is about, be with a Tannehill, be with a Goff, be with smart offensive minds, Ben Johnson specifically in Detroit, for example, and just learn the NFL game. Meanwhile, the other guys are getting thrown right away. So I do like that for them. So I am very intrigued by Levis because there were people who truly believed he would end up going in the top 5, and now all of a sudden he's going 33, and Ryan Tannehill has 1 year left. The new GM, Ryan Carthon, has really never committed to him. He's going to start, but you know for a fact in Tennessee, if he starts off and they're 2-4, they're going to be calling for Levis, and I'm really curious to see what he does on the field once he gets that shot.
Ari, I like this thrown into the fire, metaphor we're using with these quarterbacks, because the top 2 that come to mind, well, I'll start with the top one that comes to mind, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. When you look at fit and timing for a quarterback, is it really going to be good for his development to be in a situation where he's going to be the day one starter in Indy, given that supporting cast, given their current situation? Or do you think he may have benefited from a Will Levis, Hendon Hooker type situation?
Well, I'm not sure he's going to be the day one starter. I know Jim Irsay said that, but they did sign Gardner Minshew this offseason, who has familiarity with Shane Steichen from Philadelphia. So they don't have to put him out there right away. But Richardson was the quarterback Shane Steichen coveted in all of this. I mean, at the end of the day, right before the draft, people started hearing Steichen wants Richardson. He's the guy he wants. And there are people in the building who want Levis, but they're going to do what the new head coach wants because you don't want to give him a quarterback he doesn't love. So that's the guy he wants. And he is the most intriguing quarterback in this draft because we all saw what he did at the Combine in his home now, the Lucas Oil Stadium. We saw what he did there. We saw the traits that he has. I mean, his build is incredible. And you have Jonathan Taylor behind you, the offensive line, which struggled last year. It's one of the highest paid offensive lines. You hope that comes back together. Michael Pittman is a really good young receiver. There are players there, and we've seen Steichen as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterbacks coach. He's done wonders with plenty of different quarterbacks, whether it was Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert to Jalen Hurts. This is the guy he wanted. This is the guy he wanted to work with. So whether it's week 1, week 5, or next season, this is the guy he wanted to work with, and they have somebody there in the building, worst case scenario, to start off. So if for what we heard during the draft process, don't put him out there right away. So we'll see what they end up doing, but that's what we have training camp for. We'll see how he does. We'll see what he does in the preseason, and then I'm sure the fans will also dictate some of this with the way that stadium sometimes gets loud with who they want at quarterback.
It's also crazy to think about the number 1 overall pick as a quarterback to be kind of an afterthought in a draft, but it does sort of feel that way with Bryce Young, the expected number 1 pick. He goes number 1. David Tepper in Carolina has been thirsty for a franchise quarterback for a while now. He's got his guy. What do you think specifically about the fit with Bryce Young and that Carolina offense and what he's walking into?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really lost when it comes to what Carolina did this offseason is, like, we know there's a salary cap for players, but there isn't a salary cap for coaches. And the Panthers really took advantage of that this offseason. Of course, David Tepper being one of the wealthier owners in the NFL, hiring Frank Reich. Thomas Brown, as a new offensive coordinator, was a rising star of Sean McVay. Josh McCown kept on saying, I'm not taking an assistant job. And here he is now being the quarterback's coach. Jim Caldwell kept on saying, I'm not going to take a job unless I'm a head coach. Here he is on the staff. A lot of brilliant offensive minds here that are going to be there with Bryce Young. And that's really what's amazing to me. Whenever you're taking a quarterback, you want him to walk into a great situation. At least from a coaching perspective, Bryce Young is getting that with former quarterbacks, with McCown and Reich and other brilliant offensive minds. Then overall with that roster, I know they traded DJ Moore, but adding DJ Shark, adding Adam Thielen, one of my favorite receivers in this draft was Jonathan Mingo. They took him on the top of the second round, signing Hayden Hurst, signing Miles Sanders. The offensive line really came together at the end of last season. So it is a good team, a good roster. There are some good young defensive players as well. And overall, the NFC South is really wide open. Bryce Young, everyone said hands down, is the best quarterback in this draft. Obviously, there's the durability concern. There's the size concern. But when it comes to what he's walking into, from all the teams who took quarterbacks in this draft, I would say overall from coaching, I think Bryce Young got the best one out of everybody.
The33rdteam.com is the website where you can hear from executives, coaches, players, and NFL insiders like Ari Meroff, who joins us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the Outkick network. Ari, give us the team that you thought knocked it out of the park just initially on paper, and the team that did not address the holes that were necessary going into the second or third phase of free agency before we get to training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone will tell you Philadelphia did a great job. I'll give you a bit of a different answer here. I liked what the Giants did as well. I mean, first of all, taking Forbes, the cornerback in round one, I'm sorry, Deontay Banks, excuse me, in round one. I really love that pick for them because he is exactly the type of corner that Wink Martindale wants when it comes, guys. He loves blitzing. We all know that. You got to cover your guy. And this is exactly what he is. It's like a perfect scheme fit for him. And there was the video of him walking into the building. Wink Martindale gave him like the biggest hug ever because he knows the perfect fit for them. It's also some forward thinking as well because Adoree Jackson has 1 year left on his contract. They haven't had any extension talks. This guy will eventually become cornerback number one for them. In the second round, John Michael Schmitz, they needed a center. They let John Feliciano go in free agency. He's a plug-and-play day one starter. Some people had him at center one. Some people had him at center two. But teams don't take centers high, and he fell right into the lap in the second round. And Jalen Hyatt in the third round was probably one of my favorite picks as well. We saw what he did at Tennessee, 15 touchdowns. He's a speedy guy, big play waiting to happen. So they needed a receiver help. And overall, we saw the contract they gave Daniel Jones this offseason, adding Darren Waller, adding Paris Campbell, adding Hyatt, giving him another center. They're building around Daniel Jones for the first time in a long time. All these years, Daniel Jones has been there. His weapons have always been injured. And last year, we finally got to see a little bit of him with a normal offense, with Dayball. Now going into year two, I feel like the Giants did really well for what they're expecting out of this offense. So I really enjoyed what they did over there during the draft.
And would the answer for maybe the team that didn't get it done be any team that selects Sean Clifford, who I know some boards didn't even have him listed pre-draft on the top 300, and here he is with Green Bay?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the more interesting picks in this draft. I'll say this. I mean, the Jets got a great player in Will McDonald in the first round, but it's crazy to think about how that first round swap really hurt somebody. You know what I mean? Like you really look at it as something so small, but 13 to 15, they slide down. Broderick Jones goes right in front of them. The Steelers trade up. Even like the Packers taking Luke and Van Ness at 13. Some people thought the Patriots might want him at 14 because the Packers are there. They take him. That swap really affected a lot of people. So I don't know if McDonald really was supposed to go at 15. If you look at the war room during the draft, the Jets war room looked a little bit discombobulated. They took it down to the final seconds. They were probably trying to trade down. They took McDonald there at 15. So that was probably the one team that, you know, they got Rodgers. They have their quarterback. I'm from New York. Everyone is buzzing here. But that swap kind of hurt them there, and it clearly affected their plans in night one.
You can get more analysis like this at the33rdteam.com. Ari, great work as always, man. You're an instant follow on social media for those who aren't already doing that. We highly recommend it, and hopefully you'll be back on the show soon. We appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on.
There's Ari Meroff from the 33rdteam.com. Our thanks to him. Chad, he may echo some of the things we're about to go through here. Maybe not, because we've selected different teams, all but one, I believe. But let's start with the two teams, Chad, that stood out to you from the full draft analysis, the full 3 days. Who made the most sense?
Well, no surprise, because we've already talked to one guest that covers this team, and I've talked glowingly about this group for a while. The Philadelphia Eagles, to me, won this draft. Jalen Carter, being able to get him at number 9 overall, where he's a top 3 pick if there's not other issues going on, if there's not quarterback-needy teams at the top. Arguably the best defensive player in this entire draft. The Eagles get him at 9. An already good defense. And a defensive front gets even better. And, oh, by the way, they got his teammate Nolan Smith at 30, who's probably a top 15 to 20 prospect. They're able to pick up in that spot. I like Sidney Brown, the safety from Illinois, in round number 3 also as a good pickup in their secondary. They get another Georgia Bulldog in Keely Ringo in round 4 at pick 105. Tanner McKee, a quarterback that I saw in one projection in the 3rd round, goes in the 6th round to Philadelphia. I mean, go straight down the list. But Howie Roseman and the Eagles continue to impress and get it done.
Yeah, and it's just one of those teams where you're just like, of course they draft this guy. It fits perfectly. And the other thing, too, Roseman had a great quote where he was on and said, he was on ESPN, I believe, and said, yeah, I'm going to have my alumni card revoked at Florida based on all the Georgia Bulldogs I've been drafting. Joking around, but I mean, he's not hiding away from it. He knows exactly what he's doing. And I mean, they also trade for DeAndre Swift for like pennies for what they're going to end up paying him. He's not owed that much, and they didn't give up that much in future draft capital to go trade for him from Detroit. I'm with you, man. Philadelphia crushed it yet again. They're going to get a lot of production out of the players they drafted.
Incredible. My other winner is a team that had a ton of draft picks, and I think they used them very wisely. It's the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll and his group. Devin Witherspoon, top corner, I think, in this draft, goes 5th overall. And to get Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 20, a great pickup.
And he can play the slot there. Just get in college.
And you look at Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, putting Smith and Jigba right in that mix.
Yeah.
Geno Smith is primed to have another good season for the Seahawks with those pass-catching targets. Really good job with Smith and Jigba. And I love their running back haul. Zach Charbonnet is terrific, was terrific at UCLA. They get him in the 2nd round, 52nd overall pick. And they add Kenny McIntosh, who was at Georgia and was buried a bit with other great running backs there. But to get him in the 7th round, nice little running back tandem there for Seattle. Love what they did in the draft. And some of these, naturally, they're going to fare better and maybe have a better grade, at least in our eyes, because they have so many picks to choose from. Seattle's one of those teams that had a ton of picks.
And 2 first-rounders.
Used a bunch of them. And what they did in the 1st round with a guy who's going to start at corner right away, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to start in the slot right away, continue to help Geno Smith. I love what the Seahawks were able to accomplish.
And they start the run on all the receivers there at pick 20, 4 in a row. For me, the Buffalo Bills made a lot of sense versus, what they lost in free agency, who they have lost just by aging out, and also drafting Dalton Kincaid in the 1st round. Just a great pick for the way that offense runs and the quarterback that they have. Osiris Torrance, they get him with their 2nd pick. He is, in essence, at guard, the replacement for Roger Saffold, who has aged out there. And he is a road grader, Torrance. So I think that makes sense for what they want to be up front of the offensive line. They did not draft a cornerback until late, maybe 7th round. I thought they needed more help at corner. But overall, top to bottom, I like what Buffalo did. They even get Dorian Williams from Tulane, the linebacker, fast linebacker, because they lost Tremaine Edmonds to free agency to Chicago. So I don't know if he reaches Edmonds status, but they did address that spot with one of the faster linebackers on the inside.
Love this. Love Dalton Kincaid. Talked about it on Friday when we were talking about the 1st round.
Yeah.
I think that could be maybe one of the sleepers of the draft. So that's a great one.
The Bengals are not graded very high on many of what I've been reading, B or B minus, whatever you want to say. I'm not giving
very
them
middle of the road from the grades I've seen.
And a lot of it has to do with Miles Murphy not being high on many of these analyst boards whenever Cincinnati decided to draft a defensive lineman for the first time since 2001 in the 1st round. But they also go, by the way, I like Murphy. We discussed this last week. They go draft DJ Turner, speedster, 4.26 at the combine, but he's more than speed from Michigan. Watch him play, solid pickup for them on the outside. And Charlie Jones, the receiver from Purdue in the 4th round, I thought was a great pickup for an offense that is going to do a little bit of everything and do it well. And he's a guy that can step in from a backup role, and they've got their number 1 and number 2 guys set. He is a role player and a chain mover, and that's exactly what Burrow needs. So give me the Bills and give me the Bengals, and go figure, the top teams, they get it right despite drafting late in rounds.
Shall we talk losers now?
Yeah. Let's start with the non-Titans selection.
Non-Titans? Yeah. We're going to share the Titans, so we'll go past the Titans, and I'm going to go to the Washington Commanders as my loser. And here's the big reason. Just as an organization, you want to know how you lose and lose consistently? You don't value the quarterback position. And that is what the Washington Commanders have done once again.
Once again.
First off, they don't really have one. I mean, of all the teams we're talking about that need a quarterback that could trade up potential teams in the draft to get one, no, they're fine. They're going to sit there with Sam Howell as their quarterback. And they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 draft picks. They don't use a single one of them on quarterback. And I like Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback from Mississippi State. He wasn't a first-round pick. There was no danger of losing him at any point in the first round. You could have got that guy in the second round. They get a good safety, Quan Martin from Illinois, in round 2. But this is a draft that leaves a lot to be desired. And the biggest thing to be desired, no quarterback for the Commanders. I hated their draft.
I am going with the Green Bay Packers. They had so many picks. It's hard to get this wrong. I do like the additions. Let me preface this. I do like what they did at tight end to help out Jordan Love, because what do you add if you need a security blanket for a quarterback? You add a tight end. And with Musgrave, I think they can mold him into that player for Jordan Love in a prove-it type season for him as they try to decide, one way or the other if he's their guy this year and then next year. But beyond that, ton of picks. They go with Sean Clifford in the 5th round. And maybe this is due in large part to all the picks that they have. But, Chad, forgive me, Sean Clifford over any of the quarterbacks available in a draft where 11-plus were selected, and then following that up with a kicker in the 6th round, to me, that's not helping out Jordan Love. And if I'm basing this off of just what made sense and what didn't, I didn't see those picks as helping out Jordan Love. In fact, the investment in Clifford so high in the 5th was the biggest head scratcher of what was Saturday coverage, filled with not much drama, quite frankly, except for what was going on in the Cowboys draft room.
So, Hutton, since we share the thoughts on the Titans draft, let's get into that when we come back.
Let's do it.
Because we have strong thoughts on this Titans draft class, and we can't get into it in the 1 minute we have left in this segment.
And it starts with Will Levis. We'll do that when we return on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken. Oh no, they never do. And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Chad, there are plenty of A's in all the draft reviews for the Tennessee Titans. Not going to find that here with our assessment. Welcome back to Hot Mic across the Outkick Network. Titans draft Will Levis in the second round. They trade up to get their quarterback of the future, although I contest if you're in love with a quarterback, you draft him at 11. You don't play the game of waiting around and then moving up in the second round.
They don't love him as much as they say because they didn't take him at 11.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Also, the third-round running back, Tajay Spears from Tulane. If you go watch the Cotton Bowl against SC, great performance. 4 touchdowns, ran for over 200 yards. Medical history with his team is awful, and they drafted the guy who doesn't have an ACL based on reports from Ian Rappaport from the Combine. And they don't address the elephant in the room, which is wide receiver, until the 7th round. I don't mind the first-round pick because I think they actually drafted a starter. I think that's the only guy on here guaranteed to start. And this is a team that needs starting players to help them, specifically at wide receiver. They didn't even get that.
Yeah, I like Skoronski. He's going to play. He's a good player. I don't like drafting guys that you immediately draft them and there's a slash in their for first round picks.
Yeah.
Tackle, guard, already questioning what position he's going to play. That has not worked out well for the Titans in the past. It rarely works out well for teams. Now, I do think he's a guy who can play guard or tackle, and he'll play it well, whatever position he eventually gets. So I got no issue with the first round pick at all. Hutton, I totally agree with you. If they love Will Levis so much, they're taking him at 11 and not waiting until the second round. They can say, well, we traded up to get him in the second round. I don't love the pick because I don't love Will Levis, but I understand what they're doing. But it's a failure when you're drafting a second-round quarterback a year after you drafted a third-round quarterback. Just like it's a failure when you draft a running back with no ACL and arthritis in their knees a year after drafting a backup running back. These are issues with this team. None of this makes any sense. And here's what I'm getting really sick and tired of. When questioned about it, about the lack of receiver, this is not your chance to troll. This is not your time to wave at the camera and be cute when you don't draft another wide receiver. You have no wide receivers. In the NFL, you need wide receivers to win football games. This is not 1968. You got to do that at some point. And when you don't take them, it's not you that looks smart and everyone else looks dumb. The media looks smart and you look dumb when you do that. So stop with the attitude. This is a first-time GM who's accomplished nothing as a general manager. And right now, this is becoming an ownership issue. It was the owner who fired the previous GM and hired this one. And if this guy sucks, it's the owner's problem at that point. So I'm not laughing at the Titans picks because I think they're horrific. And maybe they'll prove me wrong, and maybe Will Levis will prove me wrong, but stop with the stupid attitude and the little games about wide receiver. And don't lecture me or anyone else in the media in a press conference about this is such a special night for these kids. And you need to look out for these kids and understand, don't ask tough questions. They're asking you tough questions, not the kids.
Against hypothetical John Does
you
in the
run
draft.
an NFL team, not Make-A-Wish. Give me a break with the lectures about being nice about the kids on draft night. When you draft a guy with no ACL and arthritis, it is you who's putting a spotlight on an injured kid, another injured kid that the Titans have drafted. It's not the kid's fault. It's not the media's fault for asking the question. Stop with that BS. This was a failure of a draft. I'll say it right now before the 3 years is up. We can play it back in 3 years if Will Levis is Aaron Rodgers, and I'll laugh at it and make fun of me, but I really don't see that happening.
Well, Tannehill's not Brett Favre either. So, I mean, again, like,
true.
If you're willing to trade up, according to the reports, to 3 to draft C.J. Stroud, but the Texans did that so you didn't have him, you already have in mind your starting quarterback for week 1 in September, and it wasn't Ryan Tannehill. But now they're saying that Will Levis is not the guy, at least not yet, and Tannehill's still their starter as OTAs and everything is right around the corner with different phases of the offseason. It's a head-scratcher, and it's solely based for me, Chad, on need versus want, and they want the next quarterback to fall in line with Tannehill, but they have so many needs on this team. And if you're going to run it back with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, allow them to actually have a passing game, which they did not have a year ago, injuries or not. What they did is address the offensive front, and they've said what happened last year with all the sacks that were allowed is not going to happen again. Good. And they have addressed defense to the point where they didn't even need to address defense in this draft. But to just leave a glaring hole at wide receiver and the expectation be, oh, well, there will be some player that's going to be released or some player that's going to be on the trade block. Well, the word was that Jerry Jeudy was on the trade block. Teams were calling. And then today we get word that the Broncos are picking up the 5th-year option for Jerry Jeudy after all of this. So he's not going anywhere. And meanwhile, Hunter Renfrow, who could be a cap casualty cut out in Vegas, you'll be competing against all the other teams that could possibly pick him up and pay him what he would want to be paid on the waiver wire. Again, it's very confusing, and it's not an A grade. It may be an A grade for those that think that Will Levis is a top 5 pick, but he certainly wasn't for this team, or they would have traded up for him.
One bit of good news for the Titans and Will Levis lovers out there like Mel Kiper, though. They've got a built-in excuse now because he's got no receivers. So when he sucks a year from now, everybody can say, well, what do you expect? They've got no receivers there with the Titans. Guy can't do anything.
Man, and he counts for the SEC. That's a big topic we'll have tomorrow. Hope you'll join us starting at 3 o'clock Eastern for Hot Mic across the Outkick Network.